You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Adler and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and I was right about Bix being pregnant. Hey, thanks for being here. Already getting 2 thumbs down from Jonesy there in the background. But no, this is episode 607, where tonight we're gonna break down the. I guess we're gonna wrap up the whole series, really. But it's the last arc of season 2 of Andor, and what a very emotional arc in a couple different ways. This thing hits you with some laughs, hits you with some tears. There were moments in there where I was really angry, moments where I felt a lot of anxiety. It was just a very emotional ride, beginning to end, this season and last season. Can't wait to talk about that. And to do all that with me tonight is, of course, Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
You know, until you let off the show with what I knew was going to be a hub-button topic after doubling down that this was not going to happen. And you turned out to be right. And I think the first thing I posted in Discord, I sent you a message.
Yeah.
And I was like, I hate you so much.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what it said. I hate you so much. So
yeah, but I just left it at that. You just laughed at me. But, hey, great way to end the series and the season. You know, amazing episode. So we're excited to talk about this tonight. And before we get started, it's funny. We rerun the intro music and all of that, and you see all the logos. Well, tomorrow, Albert, is the 14th anniversary of the Cantina Cast. So happy birthday to you and to Mike Rondo, all of our predecessors, and thank you everyone for joining us for 14 years of the Cantina Cast. We certainly appreciate that.
Yeah, wow, what a monument! The 14 years. By the way, there are 14 bells that ring in that final song. I counted them because I was like, there's got to be some significance, and now I know it was signifying the 14th anniversary of the Cantina Cast. So
it was destined to be.
But yeah, no, thank you as well to you. Happy birthday to you. Thank you to Mike, Joa, everybody else that came before us, everyone that was a part of this show. There have been a lot of other people that have contributed to this show in creative ways and supported this show throughout the years. It's really humbling to still be on the air and be able to do this with a smile and grace, loving Star Wars as much as we do. So
yeah, it's very humbling to have so many Patreon members. So thank you to all of our Patreon members, especially our now part of the tribe members: Alex, Danny, Mike, Lauren, Dante, Riss, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, Reader Reborn, and I've got a Brad feeling. And of course, our Delusions of Grandeur members, our top tier. Now, this is Rod Racing, CJ, Steve, and Rob. We've also got a couple here on the live stream here that are YouTube members: Zeralin, Alex, Danny. Thank you all so much. And for all the people in the live stream, we will catch up with everyone towards the end of the show. Please do come in, say hello, cantinacast.com/YouTube. If you are listening to the podcast, we'd love to have you on the live stream, cantinacast.com/Patreon, if you'd like to join us on Patreon.
Yeah. Don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes if you haven't done so. We'd appreciate that. That's always nice. We usually read those on the air too. So it's a quick way to get, 50 or 30 seconds of fame. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe and ring the bell and all that stuff. Let's see, programming notes this Wednesday. So this Sunday we don't have a show. I've got some work stuff going on. Jonesy's out of town, so we'll come back next Wednesday. We're going to start breaking down Tales of the Underworld. So we'll start with the Ventress episode first, and most likely the week after on Wednesday we'll pick that up. So we're looking forward to finally getting around to talking about that. I really enjoyed those, to be honest. I didn't think I would like them as much as I did, even after I'd seen some of the reviews, but they just kind of hit a little different for me in different ways. So excited to talk about those. Yeah. And then, I think that's it. Let's get into our breakdown. So I know I already spoiled probably the biggest thing already. So, sorry. Spoilers from here on out, even more. But let's get into kind of our opening thoughts. And, well, I got some other questions too, but let's see where this goes. Why don't you share your opening thoughts? What do you think of this arc and how things kind of wrapped up leading into Rogue One?
Wow, yeah. I mean, we're going to talk about it all over the next couple of hours, of course, but it was fantastic. I mean, I really love how they really used music sparingly in these first 2 episodes in particular. Then the music kind of starts to get more regular, but the scenes were so tense without it. And I think the direction that like Dedra Miro and some of that started to go, the flashbacks were a little unexpected, but you and I had wanted more backstory on Luthen and Kleya. And I wasn't really sure we were going to get it, but it made so much sense to save that for the very end. And then to be able to have that dynamic relationship. And like with Kleya, you could just feel the conflict all the time that she, the appreciation and maybe the love that she has for Luthen, but also a lot of that conflict and almost hatred that she has for him in a certain way about what he represented when they first met and all of the challenges along the way. But you can almost see how much he cares for her and he's aware of some of the damage that he might be doing. And it concerns him early on, of course, but very clear of purpose as they go along about what they want to do. So I thought those scenes were just amazing. If you're an Easter egg hunter, like these first 2 episodes in particular, man, it was just a feast for the eyes. So many great Easter eggs some were obvious, some were still in the background like they have been in other episodes. Some were very obvious. And if you've paid attention to other content, you know exactly the ones we're talking about. We'll touch on a few. So it was really cool to be able to see some of those continue on and really amp up. And then I think maybe final comments is when I left these episodes, I was like, did we really see Andor achieve, this journey from reluctant person to get involved, didn't even really care, just wanted to do whatever he wanted to, rebel leader? And at first viewing, the answer I had was no. Like it was not, right? I didn't see it. But upon the second rewatch, and I've been able to watch kind of almost all of them almost a third time as well, there's some moments in there that I think, yes, we actually do when he's talking to the council on Yavin. And so I'm excited to be able to kind of talk through some of those scenes. And I think we actually do see some of that leadership come out, which I think is a result of his relationship with Luthen. So excited to kind of talk through like your perspective on that too, as we get to that stage of the conversation. But it was interesting. I was like, man, we didn't really see this kind of arc for Andor at all, except that he's kind of a central person within everything. But the more I thought about it, I think it is there in a very subtle and specific way, even if he's still a bit of an individual contributor in the long run. But, a great series of episodes here. I think a really powerful way to finish it up. It never feels it's hard to finish. It's hard to wrap these shows up. It feels like we could always do more. It feels like maybe they spin on a little longer. It reminded me of like Return of the King, right? Where you've got a bunch of endings. We're kind of catching up in a variety of areas. We can't quite end it yet, but we know it's wrapping up and it's a little slower to, kind of fade out. But at the end of the day, when you look back on it, you're like, yeah, we kind of need to see some of these things to wrap that up. It really closed the door on the Andor story.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like I have some of the same comments here, like Kleya and Luthen. Wow. What a great way I wasn't expecting, honestly, to get a background from Kleya. Okay. I was expecting maybe we would get something on Luthen just because, there's a lot of mystery and intrigue about him from season 1. Sucks that he wasn't a Jedi, but, the fact that we got his backstory was kind of cool. And the way they did it made sense. I mean, we had speculated whether or not we would get flashbacks this season. I think we said there was already a precedent set because we had him in season 1 with Cassian. And since he was the pivotal character, right, the main character, it felt like it maybe wouldn't happen, but I'm glad we did. And we'll talk more about that when we get to it, because there was some really good stuff that happened in that. But man, Kleya, wow.
Dude, we talked about this like in our final hype, where we thought Kleya was a potential like dark horse, like someone who was really going to pull this series together. And
yeah, exactly.
I think we were right on the money on that.
Yeah,
one.
No, we'll talk more about her. We need to do something else. I hope they do more with her character, because she really had her moment here to shine for a long portion of one of these episodes. I did really enjoy the back, and all joking aside, I mean, the fact that she was pregnant at the very end was just like, I was so happy because 1, yeah, I predicted it, but 2, it felt like that was kind of where it was going to go for, like, I don't know. I was starting to get a feel for like what Gilroy would try to do. Like, what would Gilroy do in this situation? And that seemed like almost an obvious choice now for him to do. In my headcanon, they named that baby Brazos after Brazos, so that's why I have baby Brazos in there. But
not Nemec,
not Nemec, maybe Nemec. No,
dude, the Nemec monologue was a pleasant surprise, and the way they did it was really cool.
It was beautiful the way they did that. No, I would probably not baby Nemec, because she left, had the baby on her own, and so unless he had conversations where she realized, wow, that had a really big influence on Andor, I figured she'd probably stick with somebody that was closer. The other name I came up with was maybe like Clem, named after his father, but I don't know. We didn't really get a whole lot of him, and I don't know that they had the best relationship. Right. So Anyways, so Baby Brazos is the name I give him. Alonso Ruiz Palacios and Tim Bissell did a great job, both in directing and the writing. There were some really great like technical shots that he was doing, stuff that we hadn't seen before. That one moment where Andor and Craven are kind of walking away, we get their backs, and then it kind of transitions to them again, but now they're walking into that map or the room with where Luthen was talking about, or whatever it was, what was it? They gave it a name. I'm trying to remember now, but yeah, that just transitions like that, stuff that we don't normally see in Star Wars. And then just overall, his technical direction I thought was brilliant in all three of these episodes. The one question I had was, and it doesn't dilute anything for me, but I do have questions now of like, who is the real hero of the rebellion, right? Is it Luthen? Is it Lonnie? Is it Andor? Is it Kleya? Is it Jin? Leia? Right? I mean, it just seems, and I guess that's the point of all this, is that it took a lot of people for this to happen. It wasn't just one person that saved took down the Death Star, although it technically was because it was Luke Skywalker. But you know what I'm saying? Like there was a lot of people that contributed. So I love the fact that it's become much more complex and even in some cases complicated than we had originally got during episode 4. But overall, I'm really happy with the series. I'm very grateful that we got this series. I think the only bitterness I have, and we said this going into the season, now that we've had a chance to watch all 12 episodes, I feel like this series, I mean, as good as it is and as good as it always will be, can you just imagine if we had gotten full seasons and 12 episodes, right, for every one of these? Because
I don't know if I could have taken it.
I could have taken it. I mean, I could watch this stuff all day. And I know that probably would have driven some people away, because if you think about it, in the arcs that we kind of got like the finales, right? The season finales in those arcs. Right. But there's so much more that was, they could have added to build up, whether it's K2 and Cassian's relationship or more about Wilmon, who seemed like he seems like a very complicated and complex character. But we only see bits and pieces of him and shades of him. We can deduce what's going on there. We can make some assumptions about what's going on there. But I would have loved to have seen some of that developed. More on the relationship between Kleya and Luthen would have been great to kind of see some backstory there. I mean, you can go on and on. There's tons and tons of stuff here. These characters have so many different angles and dimensions to them that they really could have done more. So I would have loved the original pitch, which was 5 seasons, 12 episodes. Leading up into this, pulling back, still great, still loved every moment of it. But man, I really, really wish we would have gotten more. And there's so many things. Maybe at some point we'll do a show where we kind of, talk about everything that didn't get discussed or things that were kind of dropped off and left off. And, hopefully that stuff will get picked up later down the road in other types of media. But we'll see.
And I think we're going to, like you were saying at the top of the show, we probably have to do some character breakdowns like we were talking about with Kleya and Luthen and so on. I think doing a deeper dive on each one to kind of bring their whole story together. But I'm with you. There was so much packed into these. You get the sacrifice of the way that we structured the season, or the way that Tony Gilroy and them kind of pitched the season in order to do it in a more streamlined way, is that you do kind of get kind of the big activities, the big wins, if you will. But like One Up versus CP was saying, it's like it is very slow paced. And so you're cramming it in. So you get a lot all at once. I'm thinking if I had 12 episodes or even just 8 episodes a season of this, it would get a little depressing, like in some ways, because there's a lot of violence and there's a lot of, down thing. Now, granted, some of our television is like that. I mean, House of Cards was a bit like that. You've got Game of Thrones. It can be very like this too, where it just kind of draws out and it gets very dark and somber in many ways. There's always a lot of light, in it. But I think that was the one thing maybe they would have jeopardized a little bit of alienating our audience of saying, okay, where is the Star Wars hope? And when we compact it like this, there's a little bit of opportunity to continue doing that, but it's a balance. I mean, you trade off, right? There was a lot of story elements that we would definitely want a whole lot more of, like you said, that we just don't have the time for to be able to do it. But then we kind of got the most impactful moments that really hit us hard and make us want that, right? So it's a trade off there, and we could probably argue till the cows come home of whether or not we needed more or if we got just enough, to kind of make it work. But
yeah, I mean, I would agree we got enough to make it work.
It still worked. I think we both agree. Yeah.
But I would have wanted, I think I want more.
You always want more.
Yeah. I always want more. That's just my nature. Greedy, of course. Okay, let's get into the breakdown of this. This was a little weird to kind of like map out. It's almost serial in a lot of ways, in
Yeah.
terms of like how the story was told compared to like the previous arc. So
Mhm.
not too difficult, but there are some points in here where we maybe jump around a little too much here. But okay, so let's talk about that opening scene where Lonnie reaches out to Luthen. He wants to meet with him. We get that quick moment between Luthen and Kleya, both kind of talking about, Kleya's his backup. And you're right, that relationship, there was something about that relationship. It's always felt, there was always tension there. You could see it, you could feel it at times. But it was really neat to just see this one moment where she finally smiled, right? When they were talking about Move, and later on, that we get the callback to what that reference is. But it was kind of comforting to at least to see them have that little bit of a lighter moment there. But he eventually meets with Lonnie, and the minute he went there and sat on that bench, I was like, this guy's gonna die. Like, there's no way he's gonna allow this to happen. Even when Luthen was telling him like, oh, we're going to Yanni, I'm like, he's just doing all this to get the information, but he's not leaving that park. I knew he wasn't gonna leave that park. I mean,
the moment he said, we're in this together, I'm like, nope, that's your death warrant. It's
Yeah.
over. Like, before, you're a little on the fence, like, it's tense. What is he gonna do? Is he gonna take care of him? It's still a question, I think, on some level. But as soon as he said, we're in this together, and you see that side of Luthen come out, you're like, he is so dead.
Yeah.
He's so screwed, which is sad. I mean, Lonnie, trying to protect his wife and his kid as well. And then he's been with them for so long and done so many things. That discomfort he's had throughout these different years and seasons and everything that we've seen. And he on the receiving end of like that epic monologue from Luthen. And for him to kind of go out like that, I think is very Luthen in a way, but also just really tragic and sad. And it makes you hate Luthen a little bit. I think it brings you into Kleya's perspective of sorts about how far is he willing to go, and who is he actually willing to sacrifice, and how uncomfortable is it that he's willing to sacrifice, and how do you feel about Luthen? This is why we need to do a deep dive on the character, because of all the kind of good that he's done. You can see why so many people hate him and don't think very highly of him, especially like Bail and Mon Mothma is completely conflicted on him, and so on and so forth, right? For all the good he does, he does a lot of damage too, and he argues that the ends are worth it. But that's always the dilemma in some of and that's the conflict in the conversation about what's right and wrong in a rebellion and how great it is.
I think it might have been like even 10 years ago now, or it would have been like 8 or 9 years ago when we were breaking down some of the Rogue One stuff. We said at the time that Saw Gerrera, as crazy as he is, as extreme as he is, that there is some benefit, right? The Mon Mothmas and the Bail Organas, they may not admit it, but that guy is helping them out, right? He's doing some good. Not the right way to do it, of course. But I think they look at Luthen as in the same light, right? And that's kind of where it was interesting, because I think when the series started, we kind of pitched Luthen as more, at least I did it early on, that he was kind of the good guy, and that Saw Gerrera would be the one that was really the outcast that no one really wanted to play with. And we kind of saw both of them do the same thing. They kind of separated further. Of course, Saul is the absolute extreme, but you don't have Luthen too far off, from center for compared to Saul as well. So to your point,
he's more the lone wolf side of things.
Exactly. Right. He wants to operate on his own. And a lot of that is his paranoia, his distrust in people. Whereas Gerrera is more like, hey, let's bring people in. But, at the first sign that they are not trustworthy, they're gone. He just kills them. We saw that clearly in this season. So, but anyways, Lonnie does tell him that, there's the energy project's a lie, that they've mined Gorman for the power. He talks about Jeddah and the Kyber crystals. The Emperor's been building this weapon for over 10 years. And I guess the moral question here, maybe the big question I wanted to ask is, did Lonnie deserve to die? Right? Is it fair that he died? Because in a lot of ways,
to die, definitely not, right? But yeah.
Well, yeah, I would agree, I guess. And it's hard to justify it, because he always, the first time when he sat down and I was like, oh, he's not going to make it out of here, I thought, oh crap, he's got like a wife and kids, or a kid, if I remember correctly. And he did bring that up. He's like, hey, what's your plan? Why don't you get us out of here? How are you going to get us out of here? I started thinking about it. Why wouldn't Luthen have tried to save him or done something? Do you think it was just a matter of, I don't want to deal with that additional risk, even though, he'd already escaped. He knew they were coming for them. But it feels like he didn't even try. So I don't know. I don't know if it's.
I think he realized he was out of time. I think that's kind of where I had to kind of settle in, is that Luthen said, the time is now. There is no movement. Lonnie's a bit of a loose cannon. And if anybody's going to get dropped and left behind, that he doesn't know that he can trust. He can trust Kleya to do what she needs to do. But like you said before, there's not a lot of people he can trust. There's really no one. It's just really the two of them. And Lonnie's one of those people that have been really important and valuable as a mole in ISB. But he's been on that fringe, right? And I think even, Krennic and them, he's on the fringe. You're a fringy friend, which was funny.
Right, yeah.
But that fringe is, I think Luthen sees him as the same way. He's just one wind blow away from like teetering over the edge and maybe giving them up and not strong enough to be able to withstand ISB interrogation or whatever, and to try to divert resource and time to collecting his family and then securing, off-world passage and all of that was just not feasible in Luthen's eyes, to where he just said, no, this is the one path, we're going to do it. We enacted the final plan now, and we go. And so I think that's what sealed Lonnie's fate. If they had more time, I think Luthen probably would have done something, but the scale of what Lonnie told him and how burned he really truly was, Luthen understood that with Miro on his case, and if she found out who he was, like they were coming immediately. There was no room for any kind of actions.
Yeah, no, and like
I'm not going to say all that, but I think that's just where it lands.
Right? Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. Like I not justifying it by any means, but I can totally see why he just was like, I'm pulling the trigger right here and then. All right, so let's move to the next scene, which was, man, one of my favorite scenes, honestly, from the series. That whole meeting with Dedra coming into Luthen's shop. It's just, he's destroying the device at first. Suddenly there's somebody at the door. He heads over there. She shows up, and you can already tell there's something going on, right? You knew there was something going on.
She's just got a smugness about her.
Yeah.
When she showed up, you're like, oh,
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And here's where I felt like we had to just jump, right? I get it. It's been a year, but wow, she's done a lot of work to finally just jump right into, like, she's there and she knows who he is. She's got a group of people around her and stuff. It would have been really cool to kind of see all those pieces fall into place and that build up and kind of build up to this. Cause if that had been at the end of the season, like I'd imagine these 3 episodes were like the last 3 of that season. Right. That would have been really powerful stuff. It didn't take anything away from it because holy bananas, they were really acting their butts off during the scene. That line when she asks, is everything authentic here? And he says 2 items of questionable authenticity. He's talking about himself. Yeah, he's talking about himself and Kleya. Like they're the 2 that are not, or that have questionable authenticity, which I thought was like brilliant writing, of course, from Tom Bissell, or Bissell, the guy that wrote this one. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he pulls out that little dagger, and it was like, oh, they're talking about the Nautolan ones, or Nautolan race, which I thought was cool. It's just little things like that, the little Easter eggs that they stuck in there. When she brought out that device, I was like, oh crap, it's up.
And such a great way to bring back to season 1.
Oh man, really? Yeah. All, right? Just to bring it all back. Exactly. Yeah. Yep. And the way he just falls out of character, and she falls right out of her character, and they just go right into who they really truly are, was very, very powerful. I mean, it's one of the best scenes, I think, that's been well directed, well acted. If you watch the Declassified, I think it was Skarsgård who'd said that they were really like itching to get to this scene because they had both read it and they were excited about it, and you can tell they really poured everything they could into this one.
Yeah, it's great whenever you have the buildup of 2 characters that have been either chasing or running or hiding from each other, and they don't really know who one another truly are. And he even says it, she hardly knows him, and he knows everything about her. Hardly seems fair, doesn't it? It's they trade that smugness and the jabs. And for it to kind of reach that pinnacle, and they have these barbs back and forth, it makes it worth it. And you could kind of see both of them really leaning into it. Of she feels like she just got him, dead to rights. There's nothing he can do. The place is surrounded, until she starts to hear and see and maybe smell the board, being destroyed. And but he's sitting there telling her all the things like the rebellion's not here. He's not the rebellion anymore. Basically, what he's saying, right? And it's everywhere, and that terrifies you. Whole galaxy. To disgust you, which was just a brilliant line.
Yeah, there's a whole galaxy out there waiting to disgust you.
Yeah, and throwing it back at her face of saying that she did, he disgusts her, and just throwing it out there that, hey, there's a lot more of me out there now, and that terrifies you, and but it's waiting for you. So enjoy what we've sown for you.
Yeah, that other the other line that kind of stood out. When she said, "I have dreamt of this, too many versions to remember." And she says, and here you were all that time hiding in the shelter of the imperial peace and quiet. it was, you know, he's basically hiding in plain sight. And the first thing that comes to mind when I think of anybody hiding in plain sight is, of course, Emperor Palpatine as Senator Palpatine, you know. So I don't know, bit of a, I don't know, irony or at least a parallel there in some ways.
Well, it's that he is benefiting from the safety and security and the non-chaos of the Empire, you know, in more of a duplicitous type of manner, right?
And the technology, because that later on when she's geeking out over the fact that he's been using their power source to power the antenna, which was a brilliant little scene, because just that guy looking up at her. I can't remember his name.
Nerds will nerd out no matter what side of the fence they're on.
Right,
like,
doesn't matter where you are.
There's
nerds going to be nerds.
Appreciation, right?
Yeah. But that little head shake, he's like, right, you know, read the room.
Now's not the time.
Now's not the time. He probably agreed, but yeah, not the time to talk about something like that.
But no, fantastic sequence there. And of course, Luthen, you know, taking his own life or attempting to take his own life was it was unexpected, actually. I mean, looking back, it should have been telegraphed, but when he stabbed himself, you didn't know what was going on. You think he was just kind of resigning himself. You're like, how is he going to get out of this? And I got to be honest, I should have seen it coming, but I totally didn't. But that's the extremes that Luthen is willing to take.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
that's how much he believes, right?
Yeah. And it goes back to his speech, right? About, you know, there's waking up to a son that he'll never see again or something, whatever that was. You know, what did he risk? Everything. He literally risked everything in this particular moment. Alex brought up a comment here. I thought Luthen would have had a kill switch of some sort, a mass explosion, not a jar of acid, but still fun. I could have seen him do that too. Like I can see him, you know, having put explosives everywhere in the event that somebody like Dedra came in or he was infiltrated, presses a button, the whole thing just goes up. I mean, why not? I mean, it's kind of the same thing, but you know, I did like what he did, just because I was not expecting it. I thought he was just going to turn himself in, but it was gruesome at the same time. I didn't think he died though, and I was like, okay, he's probably going to go to the hospital. I think I was texting actually my brother on this. And when he did get taken to the hospital, I think I texted him and said, oh, okay, this is where Andor is going to come in. He's probably going to come in and be asked to kill him. Not expecting it to be Kleya, quite honestly, but we'll get to that here in a second. Real quickly, we get this meeting with Partagaz where Supervisor Hirt is told by Partagaz about Miro and how, you know, she just did all this. And it's kind of crazy that she did everything on her own, right? The parallels between what she did and what Cyril did in season 1 are not lost on me, right? They're almost of the same cloth. And I don't know how they got there. I think we got some explanation of it was kind of desperation, the fact that they were keeping information from her, that she felt like she didn't have any choice. But it is interesting to see that they both did kind of overstepped what they were supposed to do, worked outside of the authority that they had, and both had, you know, horrible repercussions of it, right? In kind of different ways. But he knows about, we get, you know, they know about Young. And then Partagaz is really upset that Miro has kind of gone rogue. We go into the flashbacks. So let's talk about the flashbacks, because there was some really, really great stuff here.
Yeah.
I didn't really get a sense, and I haven't had a chance to see if they've talked about like what war this was or what side Luthen was on, or Lear, I guess is his real name. Sergeant Lear is what they kept calling him. Mm-hmm. But did you see anything on that, on either any of the behind the scenes stuff? By the way, there's a really good article by Vanity Fair with Tony Gilroy, and he talks about Cass's sister. He talks about the baby, talks about K2SO. Like, he just really gives you a lot of answers and wraps up some stuff that's kind of been lingering in your head. So we'll try to bring this up as they go along, but I still have not seen anything about who Luthen was fighting for, outside of the fact that while he was there, the people that were reporting in on the radio and you could overhear in the background, it sounded like they were just slaughtering innocent people left and right. So I thought, okay, this is very likely Empire of some sort, or just post, the Clone Wars kind of stuff. But it was really horrible. Like some of the subtext that was coming on, the titles and what you could actually audibly hear was pretty violent stuff.
The subtitles were essential in some of these episodes to really capture all of the background stuff, because you're right. You really get a better context for not just the screamings and the sound and the repeating blasters and everything, but you really do get the full scope of what everything was going on. And we're doing another strafing run. There's nothing left to kill. I mean, all these things that are kind of going on in the background, you don't always pick up unless you can see it on screen.
He said one point, like, they're all line them up against the wall, and they did. And then you could hear just like some kind of a Gatling gun or something just mowing them down as they were lined up against the wall there.
That's incredible. So I took this to be probably 10 or 15 years in the past, somewhere like that. I think it was probably Empire as well. I think it would mean more if Rael was if Luthen was part of the Empire. saw it firsthand, and he saw how extreme it was getting. And again, people like Han Solo and others signed up for the Imperial Academy thinking they were kind of making a difference, right? The Imperial propaganda machine. They thought they were going out there and making the galaxy safe. They didn't see it until it was too late. And again, I think some of the other things here is like, well, how did they escape? Another part of that is, they said, well, don't get left here. They were taking their other craft, and you can hear them leaving in the background. So I'm assuming he stole this craft, but I'm guessing 10 or 15 years. And yeah, I think he was part of the Empire. And I think that's why he's got such a severe hatred for it, because he was seeing it firsthand. And then we see it a little bit later on in the flashbacks when they, flash forward in the flashbacks a little bit, and she watches the actual, lining up of young people and old people alike and gunning them down in the market. So I think she saw it firsthand compared to when she heard it and saw some of it on her own home planet too, with her own family, friends, and community. You're on mute.
Jeez. 31 minutes, 44 seconds. Got to edit that out. And while this was going on, of course, Kleya's there. This is my assumption. Again, I've not had a chance to even breathe since this episode came out, quite honestly. But I assume that she was one of the innocent people that had been a stowaway on that ship. And, he suddenly had a change of heart. I mean, he was clearly traumatized by what was going on, right?
Right.
He was sitting there saying, Rosh Nilutz.
Rosh Nilutz, yeah.
Whatever that is. What language is that? Did they say?
Know.
Yeah,
no,
I didn't see it either, but
I'm guessing probably along the lines of make it stop.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. It was translation into to make it stop. And so he clearly had some problems with the fact that, like you said, maybe like a Han Solo, where this is not what I signed up to do, right, and wanted out. Still, even with the innocent people that died, it feels like there might have been even more reason for him to hate the Empire as much as he does. But certainly she's a child refugee of war. There's some parallels here between Leia and Bail Organa, and Luthen and Kleya, where they both kind of took in some young girl as a daughter kind of thing. Although I will say this, I did watch the classified. The actress that plays Kleya clearly said that this is not a father-daughter relationship,
right?
Yeah, because of what we talked about earlier, where she's still mad that he slaughtered all her family, and he was a part of that group, and that probably won't ever get resolved. But there are moments in there where they've come to respect each other. He certainly appreciates her, and it fully explains, like we've been talking about this since season 1, and especially in season 2, where she feels like she's wears the pants in the family, so to speak. Clearly now it's very clear based on that actress, by the way, that little girl, holy banana, she's great. She did an amazing job.
Yeah,
of really portraying this very firm, aggressive, knows what she wants.
Yeah, very clear of purpose, right?
Yeah, exactly. Very clear on purpose. Did a great job on that. But that's the first flashback. Anything else before we move into the second one?
Oh, let's go to the next one.
Yeah. So the second one, we get a sense now. Okay, so this is where the antiquities type thing starts, where he's going around, he's selling different stuff. This is really just that whole bargaining scene where, she's driving a hard bargain, really a hard ass when it comes to like trying not to get negotiated down. At the end of the day, she ended up getting like 18 when he was about ready to settle for like 7 or whatever it was. Right.
I think she went up to 9, but yeah, 18, but no smile, Albert.
But no smile. Yeah. I mean, it was just like, wow. I mean, she literally gave that girl, not literally, but she gave that, gave that person the finger. But what was interesting here was that when they left and she's like, well, am I your daughter now? And he responds back, we'll be whoever we have to be. It won't always be up to us.
Yeah.
So that in itself is very intriguing, because then you start thinking, wow, how many different, types of personas and identities have they used over the years? It's intriguing. It's really a lot to think about.
Yeah, it sets the stage. I mean, it starts to tell her as a someone who's young and very impressionable, but also very angry and the chip on her shoulder and wants revenge, and very single-minded in that way. And like we were saying, clear of purpose about what she wants to do, even though she doesn't have the means to do it. And he's got to teach her that patience and deliberateness and what they need to, how do you actually achieve some of this? I think there's a lot of questions about how he became so knowledgeable about how to do this as well. Maybe he's just incredibly intelligent, or maybe he's a historian or something. We don't know. And some of that could be pretty feasible, but there's some questions there about Luthen's actual past too. I think that we didn't really get answered in the series, which would have been nice to explore. But this is great though. I mean, it teaches at a young age, like you have to be flexible. You have to be able to understand the situation, understand where you need to be. We see that play out in the hospital as well, where you can adopt a characterization of something or of someone so that you can accomplish the mission and whatever it might be. And again, the front at the store is a great example of that. Neither one of them are who, they say they are, even though they have a passion for some of this stuff in some ways. That's not really their purpose. And so everything's a front. And how do you present what you need to present in order to get the job done?
The third scene is probably the more gruesome, eye-opening, at least for Kleya's character. And that's one you mentioned earlier where she's, there was someone who got sniped. I guess it was an Imperial stormtrooper who got sniped by some local around there. And so rather than trying to find out who did it, they're just going to, go slaughter groups of people at a time until this person steps forward. They keep
finding people involved when it was one sniper. Yeah, but they're finding people and they just keep lining them up. It's incredible, like what you see going across the galaxy in such extreme ways.
And one of those is, of course, the boy that looked to be about the same age as her, right? And, of course, he probably didn't do anything. So, her watching that and Luthen saying like, all right, I'm leaving. I'm not going to watch this kind of thing. I mean, we can tell Luthen doesn't really like any of this. He's still traumatized by all of it. And so he leaves. But for her, she had to watch it, right? She had to have that moment of realization and really probably kind of accept maybe any internal struggle about whether or not this was the right thing to do. Or are these really the bad people? And I think that was all kind of, codified and solidified in her mind after watching all that. But it's that conversation that happens afterwards where he says, we fight to win. That means we lose and we lose and we lose until we're ready. All you know now is how much you hate. You bank that, you hide it, you keep it alive until you know what to do with it. And when I tell you to move, you move. And we get that call back later, or I guess we had already gotten that. But great kind of words of wisdom, things to live by, things to survive by from somebody like Luthen. And we can certainly call out examples of where that's happened now for both of these characters.
And I like that we see when he tells her to look away and to come along and not watch. And then in the next flashback sequence where we see them on Naboo, you get the sense that Luthen really is trying to protect her and shelter her from some of that so that he's not encouraging the damage that's being done to her and encouraging and really cementing this, because I think he understands how far anybody in that position, they have all of this guilt and anger and frustration and just hatred waiting for a way to pour it out, and he's trying to focus it and kind of contain it in a way, but also trying to make sure that he's not creating a monster of sorts too, especially with a child. I think you see some of that weight, you see some of that hesitation come across, especially on Naboo, but I think you get a moment of it here when he's encouraging her and trying to like, well, you're on your own then, and seeing if she'll just kind of run after him, and he's not going to be responsible for it, but he was probably slow walking that one.
Yeah, I would agree. This was really kind of that test to see, okay, where is she right now? Right? How committed is she? And he even says, like what you said earlier, he says, I'm only afraid of what I'm doing to you. I mean, he's very conscious of the fact that he's radicalizing a small child in some ways, and that she's never going to live like a normal kid life. And he's taken that from her, right? You could argue that the Empire took that from her, but he knows he's, the things that he's doing and the lessons he's teaching her and the circumstances that they're putting themselves into and all that is really kind of feeding into all of that. So, but yeah, it was really the test. I don't think he was going to let her do it. And of course she did. I mean, she even says, I know what I want. And so, yeah,
you could hear him almost say, you don't know what you want, but again, saving her from herself too, taking the detonator back. And thinking in that moment, she does actually look around. She does almost appreciate, like, there was a lot going on here. There's a life that I could possibly have, that I could entertain, but do I want that or not? And taking that moment to at least appreciate and understand it, that it exists, even if it's like, no, I can't have this because we need to be this in order to make a difference in the galaxy and in the way that they believe, right?
Yeah. Flashbacks are great. And again, wish we would have gotten more. But let's talk about
what do you think about so Naboo? Like these were like I think Declassified talk about these were a different angle that George Lucas actually envisioned for Phantom Menace that were never quite used, and a different perspective on Naboo. So it's clearly Naboo, but also a different aspect than Naboo. So that was really nice, kind of Easter egg and a tip of the cap to George Lucas as well.
Yeah, no, I love the fact that it was Naboo. And I think it kind of spoke to their success as well. Like they seemed like they were dressed in really fine garbs at that point.
Each one, their clothing and their hair, just
yes, exactly.
They're a little further along, right?
Yeah. So he's amassing wealth through this reselling. We never really get an understanding of how he's coming about these things,
right?
But whatever. It's not really important. We just know this is where all this wealth is coming from that pays for his glorious ship that he flies a little bit later in life.
Right. Tales of Antiquity, the next May the 4th animated
hopefully.
series.
And we can only hope. Yep.
Right.
Animated but written by Tony Gilroy. Okay, so let's talk about Kleya and just how much of a badass she is, because the fact that she went into the hospital and they were looking for potentially 3 people, and it turned out to be just one person who's really, really good at it. I love the fact that she was kind of keeping her head down, trying to avoid cameras. I mean, she'd clearly done some of this before, but I mean, this is a whole new element that I hadn't really anticipated. I figured she was just kind of that, pulling the strings in the background and barking orders, but I mean, she's got the skills to, pull off a Jason Bourne and head into something like this.
Where they got the slap charges, how they get the slap charges on all the vehicles and destroying them was a little bit of a stretch, I think, but it's still really cool that she's still doing these things to create distractions. And again, like you said, making it seem like this is a coordinated, bigger attack than what it truly is, when it's truly just 1 or 2 people all the time, creating these scenarios that are giving them such a hard time in order to pursue and do their mission. And again, just being clever, right? Having the right tools, getting the outfit, selling it to the patient, selling it in front of the other guards, things like that helped her get to where she needed to be in that final moment for Luthen. Just it was really impressive, and just no holds barred. When she needed to make a decision and fire the weapon, there was no hesitation. She knew exactly what she had to do, and she pulled the trigger.
Yeah, and she was kind of bobbing in and out of her character as she needed to. Like, somebody, I can't remember what she said when she was coming up the stairs.
We'll check in down here. Yeah. Oh, Dr. Nash.
Pop, shoots him.
Oh, jeez.
That poor lady, by the way, the old one in the wheelchair. I don't know if I was supposed to laugh or not, but at one point that she says something, that lady just goes, like looks up like she's absolutely.
And she's like, what?
Suffering from dementia or something, and she's just taking advantage of. I don't know.
Did it sound like she was humming the Cantina theme, like when she's like in the thing, kind of dangling her legs when Kleya leaves her?
Oh, I don't know. I saw her little feet kicking though. I thought it was really cute. But
it almost sounded like she was humming the Cantina theme.
Maybe that would be awesome if that was
another Easter egg. We'll call it that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, she takes out a number of people after she blows up that thing, causes that commotion for kind of subterfuge to get by all the guards. They're clearly not paying attention to her. And then when she walked in, I thought, I mean, she's not going to let him live. I figured as much. I thought she was just going to put blasters to his head and shoot him. But I guess this was a more dignified way, which is to basically unplug him from his life support, which he didn't last very long. I mean, he was at you could see the timer counting down in 30 seconds, showing how quickly this guy was falling out. But it was literally the only thing keeping him alive.
His heartbeat or something like that.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was his beats per minute or something. But
it was
a really
though, for her to kiss him on the forehead, though.
Yeah. That's exactly where I was going. It was a tender moment that I was not expecting in that relationship, and it just shows you that again, she isn't going to ever forgive him for some of the things that he's done, but at the same time, they've been together through a lot, and she's learned a lot from him, and of course, he's learned a lot from her. So in some ways, it does feel like a father and daughter relationship, at least to that extent. But that's her only family too. I mean, it was sad. I wasn't expecting Luthen to die, and the way they just
slowest fade to black ever.
It was like 15 seconds of fade to black, which was powerful.
Minutes. Yeah,
it was powerful, right? Because I mean, that was Luthen, and my God, it was it wasn't expecting. I guess we were, but
the only character for them to linger on from a death that I recall in the whole series, right? Most of the other deaths were fairly quick. They may have revisited just for a moment. I think with Karn, with Cyril, they did that, but I think that was the only one that they really lingered on at all, especially to that extent. I think it just shows you the importance of where he stands. And I think the legacy too, we'll talk about here in a little bit when we get to Yavin, but the legacy and the complexity of what that legacy actually looks like about where he was in those last moments compared to where they were 5-10 years previous to is an interesting conversation.
There is, and I'm kind of jumping around here, but I'm going to bundle all this together. So while all that is kind of been going on, Dedra is arrested by Hirt. This is, of course, before Kleya comes into the hospital. Krennic comes in to interrogate her about who knows what she knows about the Death Star, right? And so she's being arrested because one, she kind of disobeyed orders, went around a lot of people. I mean, she waited until Hirt wasn't even like, it was on his day off or whatever. And that's the thing, like they talked about this, like, I mean, at one point, I guess when I first watched it, I was thinking, where's her motivation for this? Like, why did she suddenly do all this? And I go back to that last arc when that one comment is made about where she gets really upset that like, you didn't even bother to consult me on the Axis mission. And again, this is where I felt like more episodes would have allowed us to really understand like where she was coming from, how burned she felt, and her putting together this whole kind of case without him knowing, because it was really kind of getting back at him and back at Partagaz and the ISB for not allowing her to be a part of Axis when that was kind of her white whale for so long, you know. But nonetheless, you know, she did all that. That interrogation scene was pretty intense. Like that was some really great acting from both of them in that room. You know, Krennic being called down there, which I was thinking the same thing he was saying, is like, why would I, as somebody who's like third in command of the Empire right now, maybe fourth in command, would I be down here interrogating somebody like you? And it was clearly because they were worried about how much of the information had gotten out, because Dedra was exposed, right? Someone had used her stuff. They were saying that she was in cahoots with Lonnie. Likely, you know, they could have had more than really what she had. And so it makes sense that Krennic would be down there to kind of sniff out whether or not this was a really huge kind of breach, or if there was some sincerity there. I think she did a good job by kind of sticking to her guns and really still selling the fact that, look, we need to get this guy, even though she was never going to be released or ask for any help at that point. But I think it was enough for Krennic to realize, okay, this might have been, you know, something that she was not aware of, but at the same time, she was never going to get out. I mean, they were going to pin this on her. And I want to point this out too. Like this came up, I think, in a couple of the books. It was part of Legends as well. But the Empire was like slowly getting rid of the ISB, right? They were starting to wind this down. And I think not to jump ahead, but when we see Partagaz and he's sitting in that room alone, they were systematically getting rid of these ISB agents over and over again because they really didn't need it. It was just turning into the military doing whatever they want. They didn't have to go through anything at all. They could just arrest people and do whatever the heck they wanted to. Whereas the ISB was kind of like the investigative body and branch. And they were like, screw that. We've got guns. We have weapons. We don't need these people anymore. And so, you know, it made sense for somebody like Dedra, who was getting kind of high up there in the ISB, to suddenly just get locked away. And like, we don't have to worry about her. We've only got like 2 more now really to deal with at that point.
Yeah, it was interesting. Krennic's comment about the ever lengthening ISB death march.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Which you could view it a couple of different ways. One, are there problems and leaks and everything else and incompetency of what they're able to actually accomplish, and which is also hastening the end of it. And you know, Krennic kind of feels that the ISB is becoming less and less relevant, which again kind of leans towards what we see in Rogue One too, with the tensions with Tarkin, the pressures on the Stardust program, you know, and a representative of the ISB, he's starting to feel those other pressures too, that they're not helping him in any kind of way. So his animosity towards the organization is definitely there as well. And it's people like Dedra Meero that are exacerbating those feelings and that pressure on him to deliver this thing and to take that credit, you know, for what he's been able to deliver with Urso and company.
Yeah. Yeah, great scene. It was in the Declassified. I think, I don't think the finger on the head was part of the script. That was something that was kind of
it didn't
improvised.
Sound like it did. It sounded like it was improvised.
And it got a response from her. Like she was really freaked out by like, what the heck's this guy doing?
Yeah.
So I think it made sense for somebody like Krennic though, as well. Oh, let's see. Sorry, by the way, when she tells, you know, she's trying to offer her help and he says, we'll do our best to carry on without you. And he just kind of grabs her by the face and just like shoves her down. It's like almost dehumanizing her, like treating her like a dog or an animal or I don't know, whatever, but not a human.
Yeah. And no music in this whatsoever. And when he just,
that's a good point.
When he just explodes at her too, it's just out of nowhere. And
yeah.
If you're not paying attention, you're gonna get a little jolt of like, whoa, okay. But
I think that speaks to. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you feel like Ben Mendelsohn's performance of just letting this stuff out, that frustration. You could just it's pent up, and you just see it fizzing and building, and just wanting to erupt, and finally it does. And I think all of the things you're talking about now with these weird actions that he's doing are just him finally being able to physically start to exert all the frustrations that he's felt and the anger towards this person and other people that just continue to fail him.
I was thinking also, like, when you think about Krennic, where he was at the beginning of this season, so 5 BBY, he seemed a little bit more loose, especially like at the party, right?
Yeah.
He seemed kind of loose. I've got a great thing going on right now with this whole Project Stardust and, the Death Star. It's all going to be great. But by the time we get to 1 BBY, he's under a lot of pressure. And he's been fighting back and forth with Thrawn on the vying between those two projects, getting funding. He's got Tarkin, who's constantly trying to take credit for his work, and he's getting closer and closer, and things just aren't looking really good for him. It's starting to look like Tarkin's really going to kind of be the face of the Death Star in a lot of ways. And so he's on the edge. He's got a lot of built up rage, and he just I think that's where we're seeing it. We're seeing him lash out at her, given, just how crappy of a life this guy is living now, as far high up as he is.
Yeah, we're all bleeding hearts for him, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, right.
And we're kind of blending scenes here, too. But I think the part of guys, Krennic scene where they're talking back and forth and, about not only who else knows, but this project should have been delivered long ago. How they kept this under wraps for so long is a mystery to part of guys. He's like, there's no way we should have been able to do this. We've been able to go so far without this, and now they're days away from an actual successful test. It's kind of the excuses too you hear from Krennic too that we hear in Rogue One of, we're so close, we're gonna do it, right? But then, do you have any faith that you can actually deliver on all of that? And there's a begrudging respect, I think, between Party Guys and Krennic, which I think you get at the end of that scene when he leaves. But you definitely feel like everything is just falling apart around them, and they need action right now. They need results now, and we're gonna, the bloodbath is kind of happening inside the Imperial mechanism here, and it's just it's not panning out well for some people.
His day goes from like worse to even worse.
Well,
think about where Rogue One goes.
Another. Well, it gets real high here in Rogue One, right? He's on top of the world eventually. Only for it to go really, really poorly.
really, really bad, really quick. Yeah.
The guy's an emotional roller coaster. He's in a glass cage of emotion.
Kleya is identified as the person that went in there. This is where we get the whole, hey, we thought it was 3 people, it was only 1. And then they basically call in Hirt and tell him to broadcast her face everywhere they could. They need to get her because of the information she potentially could have. This is where they make mention of that death march, the ISB death march, and you can kind of see it. The numbers are thinning all around them.
Hirt certainly gets a lot more confident and smug throughout this, throughout these 3 episodes, doesn't he?
Yeah, for sure. He comes up with this story or front or whatever that she's got some contagious virus, and that's how they're going to get people to kind of hopefully turn her in. That whole Partagas and Krennic scene, though, after he leaves, is kind of tense. Like, in some ways, I do wonder if maybe they did have more of a better relationship than we suspect or know. This is again another thing where I felt like, okay, there was probably episodes in this season where we understand a little bit more about their relationship. It felt like the way he was talking to me, he called him Leo or whatever it was. Leo's his first name. I mean, they're on a first name basis. And so it sounds like they might have, maybe they came up through the ranks and they were good friends at one point and they kind of went their ways. But it did feel like there was almost a level of sympathy from Krennic about him, because I think he knew his time was his time was up, right? It was only a matter of time before someone was going to take him out. And I don't think he would have wanted to be the person. And I think that's why he just walked away and he gave him that last comment about, well, good luck to us both. It's like, that's the last time we're probably going to ever see each other, because you're not coming back from this kind of thing. So, again, not a lot of sympathy for these guys, but at the same time, they are human and whatever. But yeah, best of luck. One of those things,
the Imperial, you want to know what they're thinking though, almost, because they keep doubling down on the BS that they know that they're doing and they're touting, and the where they've kind of saddled up to. But at the same time, at the very end, like Deidre at the end of the series, when she's in assault, is there any moment where you're like, you know what? I probably could have made some different choices. Do I really firmly believe in this? And at the end of the day, you still kind of believe, yeah, they got addicted to the power and they got addicted to all of the influence that they had, and they were thinking they were bigger than life and they were way more important than what they truly were.
Yeah.
So you almost have some level of empathy for them, but at the end of the day, there's no excusing what they've done. And so you're like, you've made this bed and now there's only one thing to do, and that's rest in it.
Yeah. You remember the people that used to, like 10 years ago, or maybe even just 5 years ago, or okay, let's be honest, maybe only 3 years ago, used to say the Empire never did anything. Oh, they're innocent. And this series really kind of did a lot for that.
Yeah. The series makes it really clear.
I don't know who was out there banging the drum of the Empire was innocent and they were attacked by, terrorists, but you got to watch this show if you still feel that way.
There's still some debate, I think, about like rebellions in general, though, right? And the extremes that people go to for rebellion, and the victors write kind of write the story too, right? Of how you paint it.
Yep. There is a quick moment there where Hirt comes back to talk to Deidre and is like, "Hey, I kind of need your help," which is kind of an a-hole thing to do, quite honestly, given, he was out there trying to frame her for everything. I mean, when they went in and realized that Luthen had died, he was trying to pin all this on Deidre's like lack of security, right? The measures that she took. So he was trying to bury her, and now he's crawling back, trying to get information because they're kind of at a dead end. They don't know exactly what to do. I was surprised that she even helped him out, to be honest. Like I think in her mind, she was like, I'm never getting out of this. Or maybe she thought she was going to get out of it. And this was like her only hope, is to kind of really help and assail them in some way. But I don't know. I think it was weird.
There were two things. Yeah, I think one is like, okay, well, if we do wrap this up, maybe there's hope that if we capture them, we win at the end of the day. Maybe there's a way out for me. But I think also she can't help herself. And I think that's what Hirt is trying to appeal to in some ways, right? Of saying, look, you know them better than anybody else. You know what their next moves are.
Like patronizing her to kind of prop her up
a little bit, yeah. But also, I mean, appealing to that pride, right? And I think it kind of works. Like, she might see it for what it's worth, but also she does want them captured. She firmly believes in this. And again, I think that is the only way to save her skin is, a motivating factor. But I think most of it is that she just has this pride that, no, we want to capture them. I want to see this through to its conclusion because I want to be proven right, and I want to see that this was done. Everything that we've kind of gone through from this perspective can't be for nothing. It's almost like an inverse universe of sorts, of her perspective versus like the rebellion side of things. Of all the sacrifices we made have to be worth it. We have to win. If we're gonna sacrifice so much, we have to win. And I think she's got a similar point of view, but from the other side of the aisle, right? So it's interesting to kind of see that. And at this point, she just can't stop herself from continuing on, because what else is there to live for at this point? She's literally thrown all of her chips down in this pile.
Yeah, and well, she was right, because while all that's going on, we're getting scenes of Kleya smashing into the walls and pulling out this old fractal radio, so that she can start signaling Cassian and call for help. Like, this is kind of like the Mayday SOS, the gig is up kind of call, right?
Yeah.
And
what's really cool is Elizabeth Dulau, like the actress for Kleya, actually went to like a Radio Shack type of place and learned like one of those kids' radios. So it was nothing super complex, but she was like, I actually went and like got one of those build your own radio sets. So I felt like I had something to kind of train on and look competent while I was doing it. So it's the extent that actors do to get into the part. And when you hear people like Diego Luna and others saying that everybody is bringing their A game, it's stories like that. And there's so many of those from the actors and actresses for the series and the season in particular, where you hear things like that, where they brought something extra to the table that I think helped make the series feel that much more special and that much more, for lack of a better word, real, and tangible in some way.
Yeah, it's more than the A game. They're bringing their A+ game if they're going that far to do stuff, Okay, so as she's sending the signals out, Hirt heads out, going out to Luthen's shop. That's where we get the geek out moment with the technician there that's trying to get the radio started. But they notice at that signal, like Deidre was right. They were.
Hold on, you missed the Star Wars geek out moment as we see the Mortis artifact.
Oh yeah. Well, we saw it in like season 1, was it? I think it was season 1 we saw it.
Right. Now we get it up close and personal.
But up close and personal. And if that wasn't an analogy of there's two pieces in here that aren't authentic because of the timing, where Rebels happens and versus this, I would say maybe that was one of the pieces that wasn't authentic. But that's just me.
Interesting.
Anyways, but yeah, there's some great Easter eggs and stuff. I hope we get to see more of what was in Luthen's shop, because apparently there was more stuff they haven't really shown everywhere. So
there's a lot of things in there.
Yeah. All right, we cut over to like one of the more lighter moments now. So we get to the poker room. I like that Gilroy talked about it was basically a bachelor pad now for Cassian, K2, and Melshi. I kind of felt like we really needed this scene, honestly. I mean, it'd been pretty dark and heavy for the last 9 episodes up until this point. So it was good to have this bit of a break, right, and see them just kind of loosening up. The fact that I think it was Diego Luna had said that, he kind of opened my eyes that, they're having this really fun night, and he doesn't realize that like the very next day, like his life is going to be over, right? He just wasn't thinking that far ahead or whatever. But it was good stuff. I love that they were, messing with him as a droid. He was freaking out that humans would just make these crazy risks, take these crazy risks and gamble when the probability was so low of everything. But, the fact that that their relationship is where it's at now, that's the part that I'm like, man, I really wish we would have seen some of that develop. I know I keep beating that dead horse over and over again, but it just jumped from, oh, here's this bad robot that we just churned on, and to like, they're the best of buds now. I mean, they're basically roommates, college buddies, drinking beers and playing poker late at night, breaking the law and heading off the planet whenever they can, kind of thing. It's just, it's a great relationship, and I love the fact that they are buds. So maybe we get more later down the road. But any thoughts around, I guess, this scene? Because I mean, it's actually a long scene, and I was actually laughing. Like, it seemed very genuine for them as they were kind of sitting there just laughing up and cutting up and really making fun of K2.
Yeah, and you still see the youthfulness of K2, right? He's almost like a small kid who's still learning everything around him and what it truly means. And we see this throughout the rest Yeah, literally. And we see it throughout the rest of the season. We see it in Rogue One too, right? This almost naivete that goes along with it. It's really funny when they're in the U-Wing and he's like, we've broke 17, he flips it off and does 18, right? There's moments like that really kind of endear the character to you. And it's really difficult to understand their relationship in some way, because I think, like you said, the way they were introduced, there was no immediate connection except that he was trying to kill them, and now they're kind of friends because he's a smart ass of some sort. But there's this weird tension between them too. Andor doesn't really treat him overly well most of the time, even though there's an appreciation for him, and there's clearly more there, but you don't always get that outward feeling. They're always giving him a hard time. He's the friend that you give a hard time to, but you kind of, under all of that, kind of care about them. But you don't really tell them that, right? Because you don't tell your guy friends all that kind of thing. But
yeah,
it's kind of interesting to see that relationship. It didn't really get played out too much. And I'm with you. I think it would have been nice to linger a little bit longer and get more moments where it felt like there was something a little more there. But I love where we get with K2 a little bit later on, where he reads the room, he reads the situation, and springs to action to help save his friends. I think that's a piece we got without dialogue, right? But in these moments, though, it is nice to kind of see them hanging out like bros, I guess.
Yeah, and that was why it brings it up. It was mentioned in the Vanity Fair article about he talked about K2 being very heavy, like story pieces, right? Like, you can't just have him march out in the middle of everywhere, because he's a KX droid, and that should be an Empire type thing. So he is kind of baggage, and he kind of holds you back in a lot of ways. But there's probably other missions where they're not doing that stuff, where you could have them do that, or maybe you just have these moments, which probably doesn't lead to good television, but you have these moments like this where you realize, okay, this is how the relationship started, and kind of budded. But either way, it was great. I really missed it. I really loved it. Sorry, I got distracted by his rounds. Just so we missed out on Melshi calling Cassie and Keith. Skywalker's Academy. Hey, welcome in. Welcome in, Dale, is what I was trying to say. Okay, so Willimon kind of interrupts all of this. Willimon, he comes in, tells him that the bat signal is going off, right? Essentially, they, of course, decide they're going to rush out and call it a test flight. They get in, they take off. We got some more quips going back and forth where K2's freaking out that they don't have a test flight, and they're disobeying 17 orders. And then they do another one. He's like, 18 total now that we've disobeyed. But they head to Coruscant. And we have that really quick moment there where Draven and Wilmon are talking, and, he's been very consistent about, his defense of Luthen.
Right.
I just don't know. I mentioned this last one. Are we going to hear anything more about the rhodium? Like, why, what was all that about?
Oh, the Rido.
Sorry, whatever it was.
Well, I mean, I think we could probably talk about where, maybe there's not much to talk about as the problem. I think where we saw Saw end up in this episode, that was a little bit disappointing. We didn't get more Saw of how he fit into the story a little bit better. We got kind of the crazy parts. We got some things kind of answered for us in that way and saw them play out, but how they fit and the tension. And I know there's material elsewhere that we could go.
Yeah, and Rebel Rising does a good job of kind of filling in that gap to some extent, but
But to produce it here on screen, I would have liked
Yeah.
to, and this goes back to, the comment you've made several times now. If we had a little more time, in order to explore some of that, it would have been nice, right? And I don't know that we needed a whole arc about some of it, because I like keeping Saw a bit of a mystery, right? Even in Mask of Fear, and we'll see where the rest of the series goes from Alexander Freed, but you don't get Saw's direct perspective as a first person. You get it through somebody else. And Lauren talked about this in her video. Please go check that out on the YouTube channel. But she talked a little bit about that, where you get this perspective outside of him, so you don't ever really get into his head. And I like that, right? I like that we keep that at a distance. But where we had here, kind of where we ended up a little bit later on when they had the transmission, just kind of fell apart. And it would have been nice to get a little bit more Saw Gerrera. But I think go back to Wilmot and defending Luthen. It's great to see that. I don't know if Draven and company understand what confining to quarters means, because Wilmot's not in his quarters very much. Andor's not in his quarters later on when he gets grounded. So I don't know if they actually know what that means. And maybe the rebellion just doesn't have that structure to it, or the discipline. But it's nice to see that people are standing up for Luthen, even though there's clearly a lot of judgment against him, and that he's moved in his own direction, or stayed in his own orbit, even when the rest of the rebellion has tried to organize and be something more and be something better than what than what he can do by himself.
Yeah, I mean, Wilmot reminds Draven that none of this would be here without the help of Luthen.
Right.
I think Wyatt had asked, this arc confirmed that Luthen had, or at least had some part in the development of Yavin 4 as a rebel base. I don't know if he meant that. I mean, I know you probably don't mean that literally. I think one thing I thought of is the Masasi temples are very, very old, right? And so maybe through the course of, I don't know, looking for antiquities or whatever else, he came across these temples and was like, hey, this is out in the middle of nowhere. No one knows about it. I mean, when they tell Kleya that they're going to go to Yavin, or was it? Yeah, no, it was Lonnie. He's like, Yavin, what the hell is Yavin? Like, no one's ever heard of this place, of course, right? And it's a moon. So maybe Luthen had discovered this at some point and found it, that, and thought, hey, this would be a great place to set up someday if we ever needed to get away and hide. But yeah, I mean, it's clear that he did have a hand in all this. I mean, all those people are there because of what they started so many years ago. But you could also argue that it was just inevitable. Back to what Nimic was saying, these pockets form everywhere, right? And they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and eventually they just start to coalesce. And so, yeah, I mean, he definitely had a hand in it. I'm not disputing that by any means, but I think it was kind of an inevitability at times too.
Right.
Danny says, I would have loved 5 full seasons. Thank you, Danny. I love you. Absolutely agree with on that one. All right, let's see. Cassian, so they get to Coruscant. Kind of surprising, Melshi had never been to. I like that KT was kind of teasing. I'm like, haha, Melshi's never been to Coruscant. He's freaking out about how it looks.
Right.
But they go ahead and land. They head into the safe house, and we see the tactical group there. They're on their way as well. They get in there and they basically tell Kleya, look, we want you to come with us to Yavin. And she's got a level of, like, it almost feels like it was pride that was getting in the way of her kind of, giving that up and saying, fine, I'll go there. But at the same time, some of that is the fact that she knows what they think of Luthen, right? They don't think very favorably of him. They don't think very highly of him. And she feels like she's going to be there, and they're likely going to, keep her as a prisoner or treat her differently. And, Cassian's the one that's like, hey, no, don't worry about it. Things are going to be great. You're going to be with friends, to kind of coin what somebody says a little bit later. But it was kind of curious as to why she was pushing so hard about going there when I don't know what her options would have been. I mean, I guess at the same time, she has no family left. I mean, Luthen really was everything to her at that point. So I can see why.
Yeah, I think it's clinging to that legacy, and I think clinging to what she feel like she knew what they owed Luthen, right? And she knew the tension that even Andor had with Luthen, and that he bailed on them, and there's some animosity there too. And I think she equates that with the rebellion. Like, they lost sight of what Luthen had established for them and what he had continued to do on the ground. And she says that to Andor, you're lucky he stayed here because he found this. This is the thing we've been looking for, the one thing that was going to bring it all down, as well as give us the opportunity to bring them down at the same time, right?
Yep.
What is the one thing that can completely put a nail in the galaxy's coffin? And it's this type of super weapon if people weren't there. And so this is what we've been building towards. And that they kind of spit in Luthen's face in a way, like she knows it's the right thing to give them that information, but she doesn't necessarily have to sit there and enjoy their lifestyle and, bask in some of that while they look at her with this sidelong look. And judging her from what they believe her or Luthen to be, and they have no idea what they sacrifice. And I think this is where I was talking at the beginning of the show, like where Andor shows a bit of that leadership that maybe we had questioned if the journey was really articulated that very well. And when he starts to talk about that, about sacrifice and some of the things that, the comparison between the people sitting around that table and what Luthen and Kleya have done, it's stark difference, right? And they've been living this life. It has been a lifestyle for more than a decade, right? And so,
Yeah.
and I think Kleya feels that. I mean, she feels that in this moment of where she's kind of stuck. She doesn't know what to do, but she doesn't want to go there though. But there are friends there. There are people that understand. And I think we see that a little bit later on, which I think was really kind of touching to be able to recapture some of that.
Yeah, I think for some of it too for her is at the end of the day, like she tells Andor, like, you owe him that.
Yeah.
Right. In a lot of ways, it's about that information needs to get to them begrudgingly because it's going to justify everything, at least in some ways, right? Like he was right. And she says, this is why he stayed. He stayed here for this. So I can see where, that coupled with her, probably pushed her to do the same thing. Like, out of respect for all this, I got to see this through and make sure that, they understand just who brought them this information and why they're, in Luthen, if you will.
And it's similar for, these pockets. It's similar with how they treat Andor or what Andor does in Rogue One and what they do. And the mission that they send him and Jen Erso on is because they know there are certain groups of people and certain small groups of people that can do things that the rebellion as an organization, as a group, and Mon Mothma in particular, that need to maintain a certain viewpoint and a certain, how people view them as leaders and kind of keep them their hands a bit clean. Like they know there's some elements of that they have to maintain and be able to do that. And, I think at some level they finally start to appreciate that you need the people willing to kind of do the dirty work. And that's what Luthen and Kleya have been doing for a long time.
Yeah. While all that's going on, again, the tactical groups are showing up and K2 realizes that, holy bananas, there's troopers here now. And so he gets out, and this is where we cut to the next episode. It's kind of a weird transition, but it works in the grand scheme of things. So, but here joins that tactical team, which I was like, okay, this is like Aliens, where that one officer joins and he's not going to make it out of here. I knew he was going to die as soon as he was part of that group. They give him some armor, and they basically say they're there to take Kleya. They're going to try to keep her hostage. They kill the communications, which can only mean one thing. Yep, invasion, which they did. Partigaz is monitoring from the ISB Central Station. I mean, and he's got a vested interest. I mean, if this doesn't go well, he knows this is it. Like, there's no coming back from this.
I meant to ask you, did you ever get the satisfactory answer to who these people were that were wearing partial stormtroopers but without any headgear? Did you feel satisfied with what we had of who these people were, kind of where they lined up with?
I mean,
do you even know, or do you have a theory about who they actually represent?
So I have the book. It's back here.
Okay.
Well, I'm not gonna grab it, but I have the source book, and I found it in there, which I don't know. It's been 40 years.
So are they just like ISB security forces?
Yeah, they're like basically, and I don't remember the full extent of it, but like the fact that they don't wear their helmets is for all the right reasons. Because when you put that helmet on, that's why their aim is so terrible. They never wore the helmet, so they wore all the rest of the armor, and they were kind of like the SWAT team that would go in that worked for the ISB. I already forgot the name, Comp something, or I don't remember what it is now, but it was weird. It never clicked for me as we were watching the trailers of who these people were. I just thought it was like, oh, this must be BTS stuff.
Wyatt threw in the chat, maybe Comp Force.
Comp Force, yeah, that's them. But yeah, they're from the West End role playing game, which I can talk about for hours. But good to see them. Glad they're still bringing more stuff back from the Legends stuff. We didn't talk about the hospital, by the way, that it was Lena So's hospital.
Yeah, Lena, another Easter egg there. Yeah,
I had to pause that, and I was like, what in the world? Oh, Lena So from
that was kind of cool.
High Republic. Very cool. I don't know where I'm at on the show notes here now. I've already lost all. Oh, so we're talking about Partigaz and kind of him monitoring all this with a lot of trepidation and anxiety about whether or not this is going to go well. But they go into the apartment complex. Of course, they head to the wrong apartment first. Then they come back. Melshi going out was brilliant. I just love the fact on his face, like, what the heck's going on here? But we get that fight with a firefight that's going back and forth. We broke down the trailer. I never suspected that was Melshi, Andor, and Kleya, of all people, that were hit by that kind of stun grenade or whatever it was that went off. But man, she took it a lot worse than the other two. That's for sure. I mean, that really kind of messed her up there, but that whole fight sequence was great. And of course, K2 coming in, having his little moment there, saving the day, you know, and throwing it down, and then ending with Cassian, I've cleared a path. I was just dying because it was so tense, and I was thinking, how are they going to get out of this? Of course, when he showed up, I figured that was going to be the case, but just for him to end on that note was kind of brilliant. I really love K2. Him
holding up here as a human shield was both amusing and also like, that's just wrong, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's disturbing on some level.
Yeah. Well, he had it coming, I guess.
Yeah.
So they go to Yavin, and you know, as they're flying off, K2 has that last moment in there. He's like, hope, you know, he talks about his worth, and you know, he says, "You're welcome." Like, geez, no one even said a thing, which continues to be the case even in Rogue One, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But then we get that scene with Saw Gerrera, which I thought was, man, Forrest Whitaker does a great job. He always does. I mean, I've said this so many times. I don't know that I've ever seen him in anything bad. I've seen some bad movies with him, but he still like brings it every time in those bad movies. He does such a good job of, like, you think about where Saw Gerrera started in this series and where he goes here. I mean, it is the same Saw Gerrera from Rogue One, but we really get to kind of see firsthand that paranoia, that level of distrust about how they're all coming for me. Lies every day, more lies. I mean, it was just, this speech was just an extension of that line that he gives in Rogue One a little bit later. And the fact that he was so exhausting, like the way he was talking about it. And I love the fact that when he finally cuts the feed, you could see Mon Mothma just letting it all out. It's basically saying the same thing. Like, my God, this guy is exhausting. Why do we constantly why do we call him? Like, why is he on our contact list?
Right. Yeah.
But it's beautiful. It's great stuff.
Mon Mothma, every single time she just exasperated every single time he opens his mouth, and she's like, "We're not coming after you.
Yep.
We're just trying to help." But they
were, because they were like, "Hey, there's a freaking Star Destroyer over Jeddah, and we know you're there, dude." Even though he's like, "Oh, you know," saying they didn't know, but they're trying to get him out of there because they know that's not going to go well. At some point, that the Empire is going to catch up with him while he's there.
Right, but it also gives you a clue, with Cassian's messages later on, though, they don't really know what the Empire is doing there. They think they're there because Saw is doing stuff there,
right?
Not because they're there, you know, trying to grab Kyber and everything else, right? Yeah. So again, even they've got a misconception as to what's truly going on, which makes it all the more difficult to believe Cassian when he shows back up and starts giving them the story of, like, do you really know what's going on there and what they're doing? Because it completely shakes their core about what their intelligence has been able to gather, and maybe what Saw is truly doing is Saw actually have something that they don't know about that he's trying to do that they need to be aware of. And again, more frustration. Why aren't they just working together?
Yeah, exactly. So Cassian and Melshi and everybody, I mean, they're coming in hot. They, you know, don't clear the way they're supposed to. They scramble those two. I think it was Radis, which I wasn't expecting to see. I thought that was wonderful to see Radis there. And they make mention, he says, Merrick would have shot them down himself, which is Merrick Antok, who's Blue Leader from Rogue One.
Right.
He's the ginger that we get to see in Rogue One. So,
right.
And then K2's line of, "I plan to tell them I was kidnapped," and he's kind of waving, you know, at them like, "Hey, how you doing, guys? Don't kill us. Don't shoot us down, please." But they land, they take Kleya over to the sick bay, and then Cassian goes to kind of speak to the leaders here. Meets with them, tells them that Luthen's dead. I loved Mon Mothma's face when that happens, you know, which is probably appropriate given how close they really were. Redis, when he says, "Who's Kleya?" Like what is going on here? Like, what have I missed? Where have I been? But there's so much here that runs deep and so long for many years. It makes sense that he wouldn't be plugged in on some of this stuff. I mean, he's the tactical guy, right? They just send him in a big ship to go kill stuff or blow stuff up. But he tells them that, you know, about what's going on. Gorman, the Kyber, Galen Erso, you know, Cassian feels like he's on the ropes here. I mean, he's suddenly put into a position where he's having to defend Luthen, right? They don't seem very remorseful of the fact that Luthen's gone. And they start poking holes in the credibility of the story. Like, you know, why are you even, you know, why this seems too like somebody who's been chased and been followed for years now, at least a year, from the Empire. This all could just be lies from the Empire. They could be feeding this stuff, leading us directly, you know, into a trap. Yeah. So Yeah, I mean, his line, I want to end here and I want your thoughts on it, but they're very paranoid, of course. And I think rightfully so. I mean, geez, they've got the Empire chasing them down and trying to find them. But he says, I don't know if what he was told is true or not, but it's insulting to hear him run down by people who have given a fraction of his sacrifice to this rebellion. He says that with so much conviction and passion that it makes me think about, their very first relationship and what all that means to him. I mean, they're almost attacking Cassian in a lot of ways, given how close they were.
Yeah, and this goes back to, this is that moment where like he truly steps up and shows like I understand people and I understand situations and I understand why you're nervous about this, but we should not be doubting the people that have so much conviction and have laid everything on the line to do it. And we're debating as we're on some pedestal because we could sit around this table and we've sacrificed our holdings in our company or something like that. And you get that perspective. They scoff, some of the younger ones scoff a little bit at anything that's going on, and they don't have any kind of respect or appreciation for that. And Cassian has been there for a while now, not since the beginning. And about the only other person who can truly say that is going to be a Mon Mothma or maybe a Bail Organa. And Cassian probably doesn't have a full scope of appreciation for how involved they've been over the years either, right?
All right.
And so I think some of that's a little bit his naivety, but at the same time, calling them out and saying and laying it out there of like, this is what we truly believe, and you want to know why I keep taking these risks and these missions is because this body doesn't have a respect for the information that we're getting, that these relationships still matter because they are still, not only are they valuable, but these people have laid everything on the line for us and laid this groundwork. We need to be a little more respectful and show that. And again, there are limits to some of it. And I'm not saying that you just blindly do what Luthen has, but they've probably been burned a couple of times. But at the same time, they've got to be able to say, what if this is something really big and it turns out to be huge, right? It turns out to be the thing in the war.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. But at the same time, we should at least have a conversation about it and not be so arrogant in our position that we know better, right? And I think Bail Organa does a decent job of trying to respect some of that. And of course, when was the last time you talked to Luthen? It was like, 1 year ago when he told me to save Mon Mothma.
Yeah, that was a good, right back in your face, man.
Yeah, that was a zinger. And in true Bail Organa fashion, like duly noted, right?
Yeah.
with a bit of a smug smile but I think it was important to say that because it shows that Luthen still cared about people that mattered and people that he knew would be in a position to lead the rebellion to the next step of what they needed to do.
Right.
Right. And I think it's things like that hopefully sunk in with that council, saying that he's not in it for himself. Like at the end of the day, he's not a self-centered person, even though he's doing these things. He's really trying to do it for all of us, even if you don't like the methods he's doing, because he's willing to get really, really dirty to save the rest of you from having to do that. How fortunate for you, right?
Yeah,
like he says to Mon Mothma early on.
I don't know, maybe at some point we can talk about this more. You brought it up at the very beginning about, I don't know that we really got to see Cassian Andor be the leader in the short condensed time frame that we did. There was probably other examples where he fully demonstrated his leadership skills. Right. But I think there is something to be said about standing up to leaders is a leadership skill in itself. And so I think in this moment, at least, we did kind of see that where he'd really, stood his ground and was like, no, I'm not backing down from this. This is important. You need to believe me, kind of thing. So
he finally committed and had that conviction, like you said before.
Yeah, for sure. But nonetheless, he gets grounded, literally gets grounded. So he's not allowed to fly. They send him back to his place. He visits Kleya very briefly and essentially apologizes for, look, sorry, this is going the way it did. I'm sorry they haven't been treating you as, fondly as, I was hoping they would. They're not doing the same thing to me, kind of thing. So, and then while that's going on, we get finally mention of Tivik is like blowing up their phone from Krafrini and, that he worked for Saul. Now, I don't remember this, and I haven't had a chance to go back and look at my Rogue One visual guide. Did he always work for Saul Guerrero, or was this a new development? Do you remember?
I don't remember. It's been too long.
Not that, and it doesn't really matter, I guess. I think when, at least in my first viewing, or, I guess up until this moment, or until I realized or should have remembered that he worked for Saul Guerrero, when he killed Tivik, I was like, wow, that's one of his own, like that was probably his buddy, or, they'd been on missions. And this is where, I'm sorry, I keep bringing this up, but had they given us like 5 seasons, there would have been opportunity to bring Tivik into this. And so we kind of see him go on missions with Cassian or whatever. And then, so that by the time we get to Rogue One, it's like, wow, this is really, because they had a relationship, and they said it was his friend, his contact, who just happens to work with Saul. So they had to have some relationship there.
Yeah, and again, it kind of echoes what Luthen did to Lonnie, right?
Yes, that's true. That's a good parallel. I didn't catch that, but yeah, you're right. But yeah, Tivik works for Saul, and later he calls again. That's finally when they're like, okay, we got to get this. We got to go talk to Bail Organa and talk him into letting Cassian go there, because there's just too many things that are lining up too perfectly here with which was what I think Draven says a little bit later. We do have this one scene very briefly where Mon tells Vel that Luthen's dead. Not much reaction from her, right? Because at the end of the day, you know, she still pins what's her name? Cinta's death on that, right? I mean, that's all Luthen. He was kind of pulling the strings and orchestrating all of that, and she probably blames him for her death. So I can see where she's just kind of like, whatever. I don't, sad, but not that sad.
I think there's conflict. It's kind of like with Kleya too, right? There's conflict because she probably owes quite a bit to Luthen.
Right.
But you're right. What he kind of shaped and made her, and it took for her a long time, and then what she's had to sacrifice. And
yeah,
I think you're right with how the things worked out with Cinta on the mission. They were definitely doing kind of what they thought was right, though. So I think she understands and appreciates that aspect. But there's a lot of conflict there of how they all view him because of what he had to be. And it keeps going back to his monologue. If we go back and replay his monologue, it probably takes on a different meaning at this point.
Yeah, I know. Did you watch Rogue One immediately after?
No, I haven't had a chance to.
I haven't either. I think I want to watch like this arc, the last 3 episodes in particular, and then go right into Rogue One. There's just so much that I'm really looking forward to seeing, what changes, what doesn't, what hits, differently or harder or whatever. But
yeah,
I really wanted to, but it was like, 1:30 in the morning before I finished watching my first viewing. So Hard Counter did. Hey, yeah, let us know what that experience was like. And if you did also, I'd love to know if it is as sweet as it sounds in my head, watching those together. But, okay, so let's get back to, Cassian. They're talking about Cassian. I think it might be Bell who says he needs to stop saving people, which essentially is his character, if you think about it, right? This is all he's ever done ever since he lost his sister. And that's probably been the driving motivator for him, right? He doesn't want to lose anybody. And so he goes around trying to save everybody as much as he can, and eventually saves the whole galaxy, in Rogue One. Cassian then goes to Wilmon, tells him that Luthen is dead as well. They have a nice little moment there. And then he goes back to Vel. Cassian visits Vel, and they kind of have that toast, which I thought was really neat. I love the fact that they called out everybody like, Gorn, the guy that was working for the Empire that was working for them as well. Right. Nimic, Terramin, Cinta. It's interesting that Cassian brings it up, right? But Vel doesn't bring it up. The Gormans, Ferrix, your mother. I was like, oh yeah, wow, this is really neat. The Donnies, yeah, it was great stuff. I just love that little moment like that where they're just having, those two, and they've been through so much together, and I suspect they've been through a lot together in the last 5 years that we haven't seen. But he continues to try to justify and defend Luthen even, while he's talking to Vel about all this.
Right.
I forgot to mention too, like, when Mon meets with Vel, she tells him to go spy on him, essentially. Go find out if he's telling the truth, right? Is he being sincere or honest?
I think Vel filled in the blanks. That's not what Mon was really looking. I like her response, though. Help me believe him. It's not spying. It's like,
yeah, that's true.
Help me believe him.
I think she softened it when she said that for sure. But what I was going to say was when she walks in, she doesn't like, oh, let me start asking questions and work around this. She's like, hey, they sent me in here to find out, if they, you believe this or if I believe you. So let's have it. What's going on here kind of thing. So that just speaks to the relationship they have. And you can kind of see moments in there as well, but maybe another, I guess, loss for not having longer time with them. And then we get into like, we're at the very end here, but this is where it starts to get really good because we get Nimic's manifesto overlaid with other things that are going on, right? It starts with like seeing Yavin and the Masasi temples with like the rain, the lightning and stuff. I mean, that's just all beautiful stuff. I loved every moment of that, and I won't get into this. I mean, we've heard Nimic's.
What did you think about getting Nimic's manifesto? But like you would theorize that we would hear it, within the context of the rebellion,
right?
It would be spreading like wildfire. Yep. Did it surprise you to hear that the Imperials had a recording of this? And
yes,
Partagaz was actually, that caught me off guard too.
It did keep me. I was 100% sure we were going to hear it in this season.
Yeah.
Never suspected it was going to be coming from the Empire. And I love that we did, because especially, maybe not everybody, like,
Partagaz got it at the very end, right?
yeah, right.
He's like, oh snap, this is exactly what's happening.
This is exactly what's happening, right? It was all coming to the realization. It was a big realization, wide open moment here for him in hearing all that and knowing where he inevitably was about to go. Like, it was his last. I mean, you think about it. He knows he's got only a few moments left to live, right? And what does he do? He puts on the freaking manifesto of the Rebel Alliance, which is kind of crazy to think about, but I don't know. It's morbid in a lot of ways.
And what was interesting, he's like, who do you think it is? Right? Because they don't know this is 5 years ago and this person is dead.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's kind of the sad side of it. Of like the Empire views all of this as like active, when no, this has been lingering and being
For a while.
Yeah, it's being dispersed around the rebellion for the better part of half a decade now.
Yeah. I mean, he's completely defeated. You think about where he had so much vibrato and so much confidence and arrogance in that first season. And like here, he's absolutely dejected, deflated. I mean, he's done. He's devastated. He's like talking to himself, like, who do you think it is? Right? It just keeps spreading, doesn't it? He's not talking to anybody. These are kind of like existential questions that he's struggling with because he knows his life is about to be over with.
Yeah.
And then Logret, who's just, a professional, is like, oh, I'm afraid they're waiting for you, sir. Like, we got to get this over with. You need to go die, kind of thing. When he said, may I have a moment to gather my thoughts? I thought, well, he's going to kill himself. Like, it just seems like
I thought that too, but I was like, but how is he going to do it? And then he pulled out the gun. I was like, all right, well, guess you'd have a DL-44 just hanging out under your desk.
Yeah, that'll do it. It only takes one shot.
It only takes one, yeah.
But that little hand gesture, and they brought this up, I think it was in the Vanity Fair article with Tony Gilroy, but that little hand gesture that Logret does, where he's like, nope, and the way they just they immediately were about to jump, and he was just, no, let him have his moment. This is, what was expected, kind of thing. There was, I don't know. It was
almost a bit of respect.
Respectful, but at the same time, kind of disturbing that this is even just happening, right? I actually felt bad for Partagaz at this moment, honestly, but I know you didn't.
But
I know.
Yeah, I'm ruthless when it comes to that stuff. But but again, I understand what you're saying though. Of they have these characters have these moments of realization, and you're just wondering if they really truly get it. And you almost think that maybe Partagaz does, but he still wouldn't have done anything different, even had he known the final destination, right? And that's the part that where you feel good about. Okay, well, they kind of got what they got at the end of the day because they kept doubling down on this stuff. And you could argue that there was probably no credible way out of these jobs anyway. You couldn't just disappear like Luthen ended up doing with Kleya. But at the end of the day, these they kept doubling down on these behaviors, even though they knew what they were doing in the interest of their own power and their own agendas. So
yeah. I had asked that question in the chat earlier about who watched it afterwards. A couple people chimed in. So Hard Counter did. I'll get to his comments in a second. Alex says, I watched it right after. It was great. Zer Allen says, I rewatched it immediately after. It was a great experience. And Hard Counter said, Rogue One certainly has a gravity to it that it didn't have before this. That's what I was hoping would be the case. He says, I found myself being much more attentive to every character choice more. So yeah, I mean, you probably start watching and looking for the connections that are there, which, well, we'll save it. I want to talk about how perfectly I think it segues into the Rogue
Well, when
One.
you have consistency between the creators, between
Right.
it, like,
It's
everything is intentional. So it's not just you and me and people that are way into this like this, and like our folks in the chat here, not making inferments, and we're kind of making our own connections. Like, it's deliberate. That has a much more special meaning. So I'm excited to go back and revisit this and see how it feels a little bit different.
There was I'll swear this will be a 30-second tangent. There was an article that I read from somebody. It was one of the bigger publications. It wasn't Hollywood Reporter. It might have been Vanity Fair, now that I think about it. Or maybe it was Rolling Stone. I don't know. One of those guys. And this guy that was writing the article was so arrogant in talking about how all these inconsistencies now existed between Rogue One and the fact that, they've now tried to, write a story that happened before it. And all of the examples he cited were wrong. Like, I don't even understand, like, this guy must have watched a completely different series or just doesn't know. I hate to sound like, I don't know, arrogant or pompous, but he doesn't know Star Wars. The one that really pissed me off, he was like, that line where Cassian says, some of us have been fighting this war since we were like 7 years old or whatever. he was saying that, oh, now that we know that Cassian, didn't do that, and he's had all this other stuff that doesn't make any sense, and that's unfortunately, that's a result of trying to write a series from a movie that was 10 years ago. And I'm like, no, dude, you didn't watch season 1 of Andor, and you don't get exactly what's being told there. But okay, that's my tangent. Sorry, it's longer than 30 seconds. All right.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be some inconsistencies, right? When you go back and revisit, there's going to be some minor things, but some people
But
are
they're
just trying to
minor.
get.
They really are minor.
Some people are trying to get a byline, and they don't want to really dig into the material, so
Yeah.
they have no credibility in our books.
Nope. That's the way we like it. Okay. All right. So Partagaz kills himself. And then we go back to the scene that I didn't think we were going to get, because we talked about this in the last episode about whether or not we would see Bix.
I'll just show myself out. Yeah.
No, I'm not getting to that scene yet.
I'm
just getting to the reference, because we said, would they even bring her up?
Oh, right. Yeah.
So this was surprising for me, honestly. I was like, oh.
I wasn't surprised by it. I was like, okay, yeah, we're going to wrap this up. And this is the scene that we thought we were going to get that was going to rip our hearts out, right?
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, she mentions that, she tells Andor, have you seen her? And he's like, no, she's safe. That was a year ago. I don't really, what do you say? She's safe, isn't she? She wouldn't be safe with me. It's too late for that. And so I'm sure that's what he tells himself, like every night, to kind of make peace with the fact that she's gone. It's certainly what I would do. But, she responds back saying she might disagree. And he says, once it settles down, maybe I'll think about it, which was already kind of heartbreaking to think about, because it's never going to settle down.
Oh, and as soon as he said that and she walked off, I'm like, oh no, she's going to stop. She's going to turn around and she's going to tell him not to wait too long. And sure enough.
Yep. Don't wait too long. Which then I was like, oh, don't wait too long, because you have a child that is getting older and you don't want to miss out on those younger years. That's immediately what I thought. And I thought, I'm going to text Jonesy here in just a few minutes.
I know. And I was like, I don't like where this is going, but they did it. Okay. We'll shed our tear now. We're not going back. We're not going back. There's no place like home.
Oh yeah. It's good stuff.
Hmm.
And then we hit, so we're kind of wrapping up here. It's kind of winding down. I mean, it's really kind of the aftermath of everything, or maybe the calm before the storm. But we did get that moment there where Vel, finds Kleya wandering aimlessly through the rain. I don't know. I really haven't had time to sit down and just kind of digest or try to get in the head of Kleya, like what she was thinking, outside of just being, stranger in a strange land. It's raining. She's feeling sad. She's probably not even thinking straight. She decided to walk out. I don't know what was going on there, but
yeah. But I love the reversal of roles though, because in season 1, Vel was the one who was lost and desperate to try to connect with Luthen and get direction and get whatever it is that she was looking for. This kind of father figure, I think Kleya put it at. But she viewed Vel as the lost child. And now she comes into this environment. Vel's already kind of gone through this weird transition of trying to get into this rebellion, and where she's come from, people probably know her history as well.
Yeah.
And then for Kleya to be in that position, we know all of her trepidation. She laid it all out to Cassian before, and to come and see Vel, and Vel basically take care of her and welcome her in with open arms and say, hey, you're okay. Like you're going to fit in here, and I'm here, and we're in a very different place than we were before. I think it's touching, right? To be able to pick that relationship up and then maybe do something else with that. Kleya, man, I'm really happy with the kind of the arc that Kleya went on, and where we were able to spend a lot more time with her, which is something I was really hopeful for going into the series. And we got that, right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a character that you could definitely want to pick up more later on with, of seeing where she goes. What roles does she fit within the rebellion? What's next after the rebellion for her?
Yep.
You can't see her really sticking around with New Republic, but it's a character you definitely could feel popping up in other content, because she's interesting and there's something more to her, right? And with Vel and their history, you could see where that could become like a friendship that could blossom into other adventures and things like that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Oh yeah, as Rowlands pointed out, yeah, Vel's comment, "I have friends everywhere," was just so appropriate and so perfect.
Yeah, like
this is the thing that gave us confidence that we could trust one another. Trust me now, type of thing.
So good. She's what is it? Was it Vel or was it Kleya? One of them said, Luthen always said, know your way out before you go in. That was one of the lines that he told. That was like one of the very first things he ever told Cassian Andor during season 1. So I love the fact that kind of came back and circled around here. And she says, I don't even know who I am. This is where you get, I have the friends everywhere. You're with friends. And then she leaves to go find Mon Mothma. Draven finally shows up. He releases K2, lets Melshi out or whatever. They talk about everything kind of coming together, the ISB mole, and, they've got Tivik reaching out to us. And so they decide they're going to go talk to Bail Organa. Now, I want to ask you just a quick question here, because I've seen a lot of feedback that I don't agree with. I'll just be honest. I've seen a lot of feedback about the portrayal of Bail Organa and that he seemed out of character, like he was a jerk, or that he was, not respectful in, how he talked to Cassian Andor and how he treated him. And this was, Jimmy Smits would have done it better. I cannot, for the life of me, understand where that's coming from. If you're not watching this show, you're not realizing that the most important thing that happens right now is their secrecy. And they tried to play this up. Maybe they didn't do a good job. Maybe this was lost on some folks. But Cassian is somebody who keeps leaving off planet. He keeps exposing them, right? He's introducing way, way too much risk. That's why, even though that was probably Cassian Andor's U-wing when it landed, and that door opened up and it was clearly Cassian Andor, they still had their guns on them because they can't trust anybody to come in that way, right? And so if you got some maverick that's constantly doing this, he's not going to always be super friendly and, treat Cassian Andor like he would treat Padme, right? Or, or not Padme, but Leia, sorry.
Right.
He's just not the same, right? He's got things he has to do. There's things he has to take care of. There is a level of security that he has to maintain. And he is a prominent figure in the Alliance. So I'm not saying he wasn't, short with him, because I think he was. And I don't think he liked him at all. I don't think that's why, what's his name? K2 says, the guy that you don't like is here. They've not had a good relationship because he is kind of loose and he introduces way too much risk. So I totally understand where this side of Bail Organa is coming from. It's justified for me, at least, given what's going on. And I don't think has anything to do with the actor who's decided to suddenly take some kind of crazy creative liberty and redefine a character that has been well established for so many years now.
Your rant's justified in this case. The actor we remove the actor from this. This is the writing, right?
Right.
If you don't like something, this is the writing. But I'm totally in agreement with you, because I think this is exactly the situation. They have so much, they know what Cassian is capable of. They want to invest more in him. They just want him to abide by the rules. They want the secrecy. They want to protect what they have. They have struggled so long, and you see the contention with Saw Gerrera, the tensions they have with Luthen. It's taken them so much effort to coalesce and bring everything together. The things that we know from Rebels and from all the other content we've had where they've struggled to bring everybody together, those are the things that bind them, and they know it's tenuous, right? Saw calls them out on it too. Every time you call me, everything's about to fall apart, but then you want to tell me how we're all together and we're all better than we all are. But we know things are tenuous at best. We know that we see this in Rogue One really clearly. You have people wanting to bail, right? We saw this thing in Rebels too.
Yep.
Where it's everything's about to fall apart unless you get something you can all really champion behind. And they want Cassian to be a part of that. But if he's not playing ball, or if he's still going on these other missions, and if he's going these rescue missions without any kind of authorization or even discussing it with them for someone that they don't like really in Luthen and have much different opinions and are at odds with, you see why they would have that position of why we just want you to abide by these rules that you've probably kind of helped us establish.
Mm-hmm.
But Cassian's never been like that either too, right? So he's still kind of being true to who he is, and he's not always let people in and formed these relationships with authority figures. He's always butt heads with Luthen too.
Right.
Even though they view him as a bit of a Luthen sympathizer, like he's got a lot of animosity towards Luthen, right? There's a lot of tension there too. It's just him and that authority aspect he's always a bit struggled with. So I think this is all perfectly in character, and I think it's perfectly well written. And that tension, I think, it's where the rebellion is at. I mean, just plain and simple. And it's confusing that people would see that as problematic, because I think it's uncomfortable. I mean, make no mistake, it's uncomfortable to watch it. It's disappointing that we see that side of the rebellion is still not there, but we knew it was there all along.
Yeah.
We've seen it afterwards, so we know it's there. So why, if we didn't see it now, we would be justifiably calling it out as inconsistent from what we've seen before, but it is absolutely supposed to be there. And I think we see that tension of just how the rebellion operates. It's just not always, it's not fully functional yet. It's not, they don't have that trust in one another to be able to know they're all on the same side.
Yep.
Or they're all going to work and pull in the same direction at the same time.
And furthermore, he's a captain, right? So
Yeah.
you can't have a captain, one of your leaders, doing these types of things because, you know, behaviors are going to be mimicked. And so suddenly they have everybody just leaving off planet.
Exactly.
It's about control, right? He's got to, that's where Bail is coming from, right? Especially as a leader as he is. So I'm going to go to the chat because I got people backing me up here, backing us up. K2's The Man You Don't Like Is Here was hilarious. Zorellans goes on to say, I would have loved to see more Bail and Cassian interactions. One Up versus CPU says, we have rules for a reason, Andor. Take that. And trust me, I love Andor. So I'm not saying that. Alex says, man, Benjamin Bratt was flawless as Bail. Does an incredible job. Wyatt agreed, says he did an amazing job. And then Zorellans came back and said, Bail is used to following structure. Yeah, and Cassian is the man in action that's very flexible, adapting to situations with high stakes. To have them butt heads would have been delightful. Yeah, I agree. I would have loved to see more of that relationship. But yeah, it feels like it would have been like a Top Gun Maverick and the
Iceman
or something. No, not Iceman, because Iceman was flying. But I was thinking the other guy. Whatever. All right. The head dude.
Yeah. Right.
Where the heck are we? Oh, so he has the quick dream with his sister. And
Yeah,
I thought,
this was surprising, and
Yeah.
it still didn't really go anywhere.
didn't go anywhere. I mean, I guess it's a check-in, like, oh, he hasn't forgotten about her. Remember, he's still out
Yeah.
there.
But okay.
Yeah. Gilroy did talk about this in the
What did
Vanity
he say?
Fair.
Yeah, I didn't read this. So what did he say about this?
He basically said that it was unfortunate they had to drop it, but at the end of the day, he sided with the fact that she was kind of a catalyst more than anything, and that even though it sucks for him as a character to have this unresolved, that he needed this to kind of be who he was and to kind of drive all that. So it goes back to what we were saying earlier. Like, he went out to go try to save everybody at this point because he didn't want that to happen to, he wasn't able to save his sister, wasn't able to save Marva, right? She died when he wasn't even around. And so, it just kind of gave him more resolve to go around and try to do all that. So he did acknowledge it. So, oh well. Sometimes that happens. But he has that quick dream. That's when Bail Organa walks in. He gives us that line, if I die fighting the Empire, I want to go down swinging. So just kind of reminding us of who he is, right? Yeah, he's, now up here, Mr. High and Mighty kind of thing, at least in the Rebel Alliance. But at the same time, he is still the same, Bail Organa that we would expect. And certainly these types of traits, right? That line of, if I die fighting the Empire, I want to go down swinging, that's Leia, right? I mean, he passed that down to her, clearly. I love that line about you and Luthen would have gotten along better than you guys think you would have. And then him just saying, may the force be with you. It's like, oh, thank you. Finally, somebody freaking says it in the show. It was great to hear that. And we get it, later down the road in Rogue One as well. So just kind of tying all that together. All right. The final montage, which is very powerful. That music was great throughout all of this. Before I forget, the last song, I don't know if they've released the tracks for these episodes. It usually comes out like a week later. But the last music piece that happens when the credits start, that might be like up there as far as like one of my favorites ever in Star Wars. I don't know what it is about it. It's just that slow rhythmic beat that starts building and gradually becoming more and more dramatic. It's absolutely stunning and beautiful. I can't wait to, and that's why I was counting the number of gongs that were ringing in that one, whatever. I can't wait for that to come out. And I don't know if you want to talk about this now, since we're already talking about music, but they did run right into the Star Wars, fanfare, like the main theme at the very end, which
it was different though.
It was a little different. It didn't sound exactly the same. I don't think that I hated it, but I just love the fact that it was there, right? To kind of just remind us that, oh, by the way, we are in Star Wars. See, told you.
That was the comment I made in Discord. They had called it out, and I'd heard it, and I went back and listened more closely. I was like, man, this is a very different variation. So it's not quite as impactful as the main theme that you would have when you first boot up Star Wars: A New Hope or any of the other ones, but it's there. It gets the point across. It does some variations on it as well, but yeah, but it was cool for them to include it. But again, not my favorite version of it, but still unexpected and a nice kind of tip of the cap to the franchise.
And every movie, like every main movie, ends with that part, that piece. Yeah. So it was kind of cool that they threw that into this TV series for the first time. All right, sorry, I didn't mean to jump ahead, but I knew we'd probably forget. I would forget about that a little bit later. All right, like the final montage though. So Cassian's getting ready to star in Rogue One. He's putting on the exact outfit that we see him in Rogue One on. Melshi's training the troopers. We get to see Pow, that little like alien creature that we see in Rogue One, who's on the cannon later. Right. We get to see him there. I saw somebody was saying that was Cara Dune, that female that was running, that was hiking. I was like, man, come on, guys. I mean, I'm all for the tinfoil hat theories, but that's not Cara Dune. Woman and Drina are eating breakfast. Mon and Vel are eating with just right there on the front lines with the grunts, you know, the people at the front lines, and they're eating breakfast as well.
Kind of like the scene we had with Mina Rao, like where they're all lining up on the table for lunch. Yeah.
Yep. This one was like out of nowhere, and it shocked me because I was like, what happened here? Like there's a couple episodes or seasons that we missed, but Perrin and Skolden's wife together.
Yeah, that was unexpected. It was kind of out of nowhere. We visited Perrin. And I was like, oh, well, Perrin really is kind of a piece of garbage after all.
I don't know. I mean, he doesn't have
Tony
his wife anymore.
What are you doing, man? You wrote him one way. You didn't like how it got feedback, so you kind of changed him up a little bit, and then you recap at the very end with him, you know, suggestive affair with somebody else. So,
but where's Mr. Skolden? Like, I don't know, man. I need to know what happened there. Like, that's like, maybe they'll do like a Star Wars daytime TV drama. Like Lord. General Hospital, and we can get all that stuff in that series. That'd be amazing. I'd love to see that. Kleya wakes up, right? She sees the rebels. She kind of has a smile on her face. I think the audio description said that she smiled a little bit. So maybe that was the first sign of that. Okay, things probably will be okay so long as, you know, I'm here, right? Dedra and Arkina was kind of shocking.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
she just collapses into her hands. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they showed her once and she's just sitting there kind of dumbstruck and dumbfounded, you know, almost dazed about what's happened to her in her life. And then later on in that second pickup shot that we get with her, she's just, the lights go out and she breaks down on Arkina. So good for her. See, good things happen to good people. That's and right. We get Cassian seeing the Force healer, which is good. I like the fact that he nodded at her like, thank you, right? You gave me purpose, or you helped me kind of see my way. I don't know. That's how I was reading it. But I wonder what she was thinking. Like,
she's probably
this is it.
Yeah, this is it.
This is the moment that I you know, saw or felt earlier.
Right.
We get Saul watching over Jeddah and the Star Destroyer. That was pretty powerful. Just, you know, ultimate defiance. I mean, that's how he dies. Just staring out in the middle of this big explosion coming at him, and takes it that way. So kind of sad to see that. Cassian heads into his U-Wing. You know, Krennic's looking at the Death Star. This is all just kind of build up to Rogue One. There's a rumor that we have a flight plan. It's what K2 says to Cassian. Nice, that was a good little touch there. Mentions that they're heading to Krafini and get us out of here, which I think he says that a couple times in Rogue One. It's just kind of what he says to K2.
Yeah, and then the series ended.
Nope. And then there was one scene remaining, which was a scene on Mina Rao. You got B2 playing games, another ag droid there. You know, as soon as
the scene came up, I was like, oh my gosh.
I was so freaking happy about this scene, honestly. And he does talk about this. I don't know if it was in the Vanity Fair or something. I didn't actually get to read it. I need to. I just was short on time, but they cover it in the Declassified. There's a section in there where they talk just briefly, kind of talk. In fact, they end on this particular part here about how Gilroy had told her, just wait till the end of season 2, right? Something really big for you in the season finale. Alex keeps going on about this being Broom Boy. I'm like, dude, stop. It's not the Broom Boy. It's Baby Brasso. Like I said, it's got to be Baby Brasso. But yeah, you know, she's moving through the crop. She's holding the baby. And then the one thing, and I posted this on social media, it got a lot of attention. But the last 5 notes when she's just standing there, those notes are from Your Father Would Be Proud from Rogue One, which was about Jyn Erso, right? Your father would be proud. But they took those 5 notes and put them in there at the very end, which, you know, because your father would be proud. They're talking about Baby Brasso and her dad. And I was just like, oh my God, this is like, we don't deserve this, honestly. Like this level of thought and attention to detail and really just going for like the deep Easter eggs and deep cuts on stuff like that. It's just brilliant, brilliant writing. But I don't know whose creative decision that was. Whether I don't think it was probably the musician more than anybody. I forget the guy that did this, which I apologize for missing his or forgetting his name. But we talked about whether this would be different since we didn't have this new guy kind of coming in based on from season 1. But I mean, he knocked it out of the park with some of this stuff. It was just really, really great, and this was just really that final kind of cherry on the top for me. But I don't know. What did you think about that scene, Jonesy?
It was a heartwarming scene. Like, let's kind of call it what it is. I think the issue I have with these types of things is like,
look at the time. We got to go, guys. Hey, guys, thanks so much for. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead. Let it all out.
We see things like this fairly often, which is why it just didn't feel super original. Like, oh, she had a kid now and she's happy and looking forward. They already teased out like, oh, well, don't wait too long, so we know what's going to happen. And now he's going to grow up without Cassian, and he'll learn about his dad. And it kind of goes we kind of saw this with Hera, right? I think too, and we've seen this a few different times, and not only just Star Wars. I think it's just, I don't know if this is actually a trope or not, but it kind of feels like it's kind of a trope.
It kind of is. Yeah, I would say it's tropey in a lot of ways.
Yeah, so it just kind of felt unoriginal in that way. And I'm not trying to be critical of Tony Gilroy. And again, it was a very touching scene. It was very heartwarming and full of hope. And I think that was the point. That was the point I kind of landed on at the very end. Like when I got to that point, I was like, okay, I feel good about this. Is that idea of hope that even though we know what's going to happen with Cassian and the crew with Rogue One and where that's going to go, that they paid it forward a bit for the next generation, right? And everything that they sacrifice and what they're doing that's embodying it kind of in that way of keeping the spirit of Cassian and the spirit of freedom alive, right? And so that's the point, right? You can't just end on pending doom and tragedy. You have to have something to give it an uplift. So I think from that respect, it was the right call to give you something that kind of lifts you up, knowing what you're walking into when you fire up Rogue One, in the next few minutes. So
yeah,
it was nice to be able to see that there, but still a little tropey for me. I get tired about seeing the same things, and it just kind of felt like Hera kind of all over again with Kanan.
I can see that. Right. And in other examples outside of Star Wars where this happens, I think for me, it kind of recontextualizes her decision to leave. Right. Because I think it was Andor.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I think it was Gilroy who said, this is another interview that he did. He did say that she knew she was pregnant when she had that conversation with Andor. Right.
It makes so much more sense. Right.
Exactly.
If he knew she was having a kid, he wouldn't have done anything.
Right.
Right. So he had to remove not just her, but for the kid now too. Yep. Like she had to do this in order for him to pursue his destiny. Yeah.
Yep. No, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like it just makes total.
No,
you're good.
Your thunder, but yeah,
no, it makes total sense. And so it does kind of give maybe, I guess, more clarity. Again, more it recontextualizes the scene. I think some people were worried about like, oh, she just decided to leave because some force healer or whatever. And at that point, you're just like, okay, well, you have to take her at face value. You got to, honor her convictions and what she feels. And, we were going on about, well, maybe this is, the will of the force, the cosmic force is stepping in and it's, drawing her to make this decision. And it's much more, real and human than that. It's the fact that she was a mom and realized that if she stayed, he wasn't going to do anything. And so she couldn't let that get in the way.
You're saying the Force created the child. Right?
Yes, the Force created the child, similar to the way Anakin was created by Palpatine. So,
gotcha.
I'm glad we got there in the end, but good stuff. I mean, it's a very powerful scene, and I'm glad they saved it to the end, and I was right. So, I don't know.
That's what else. In the end, that's truly what matters, right?
I mean, this is kind of like a Razor Crest moment in a lot of ways, or maybe not. I don't know.
It kind of is, yeah.
Yeah.
Would we have seen this coming at the beginning of the show? Probably. Well, maybe there's probably some people that maybe had some theories out there because again, legacy, right?
Yeah.
And it was good to see One Up versus CPU, B2 emo, B2 or whatever lives. And I think, with B2 enjoying himself and playing games was also nice to see that he's happy.
Yeah. Wyatt says that she was pregnant when she leaves Cassian a year earlier to motivate him to fight. Yes, I would agree. What was the other one? One Up says Andor Junior series coming. I can't see them not picking this story up of the child. It feels like there's too many people that are vested. So I'll have to do the math later and figure out could they potentially pop up in something down the road? I don't know.
Well, I mean, if we think about where we're at, you're putting them in the sequel trilogy range, right?
Yeah.
So
possible.
Sorry, we've already shown that story. We can't go any further.
Look,
We don't like to retread timelines around here.
No, that's not true. Alex is taking the General Hospital route and saying that this could be Saul Guerrera's baby, which it's possible. No, it's not.
Don't you dare dishonor Bix.
Yeah.
Trent coming in with the realistic. No, thank you.
No thanks. We're going to end the show on that because that's pretty much the theme for the show. No thanks.
Yeah, so maybe your kind of just overall recap of the season 2 as a whole. And again, we're probably going to do some deeper dives on this for Patreon and some other stuff, but kind of your just general feeling season 2 as a whole.
I mean, it was great. I mean, it was, again, I don't want to sound hyperbolic or dramatic when I say that this was the best series that they've done on television, but I think it is as far as Star Wars goes. And I say that as someone who had season 1 kind of, I think I had that ranked number 2. I was still pulling for like Ahsoka or something. I don't remember. No, I had Ahsoka number 1. Sorry. I had Andor number 1. Ahsoka was number 2. So yeah, this just kind of cemented the fact that this is the best series that we've gotten. I know. And again, it sounds cliche, but when you think about this and you look at it objectively, this is one of the best television series that I've ever seen personally. You know what I mean? Like the writing and just the production. We've talked so much about a lot of the cinematography and the framing, the composition of the shots. I mean, it just felt like it was a movie at times, even the special effects. Like, I don't know that there were really many weak points in this series with regards to special effects. Although, did you notice the volume when they were panning from left to right? It was at nighttime and they're working on that X-Wing. It was kind of bad. You could see the screen of the night sky for Yavin. Yeah,
there was a little bit of the math there didn't quite work
whatever.
Out. Yeah,
but I guess what I'm saying is, though, so I'm kind of joking.
So few and far between from what we're used
exactly
to.
Right. Yeah. Compared to the other series, like this is above and beyond all that. I don't know that we'll ever get another series this good. I know a lot of people have said, "Wow, look what Star Wars can do." Well, we have to give credit where credit's due. Tony Gilroy put together a great group of directors, writers, actors, and a story driven by him who's, he's got a precedence and a history of delivering these types of stories. All of those things had to come together for us to get this, right? So I don't know that we ever get anything like this again. I would love to think that it happens in my lifetime. I just don't know. I felt like season 2, to get more specific to your question, was a great way to kind of wrap everything up. I do feel a little shorted that we didn't get so many more stories and development in some of these characters, and we just kind of had to go with it and go, okay, well, that's changed, and now this relationship exists, and we're fine with it. All of that was made easier by the fact that these were great performances and great writing. I think if it had been, if this would have been the plan, and we didn't have all these wonderful people involved, this would have felt really like disjointed, and it could have really been kind of disastrous in a lot of ways. But I think as it stands, yeah, this is going to be hard to top anytime soon in Star Wars. And I'm just thankful that we got this. I mean, talk about Rogue One being something that no one really asked for. Everyone laughed at because they were taking one line or a couple words out of the crawl from episode 4, giving us that movie that we got that had so much emotion and so much depth and so many great characters in it. And then getting this on top of that, where we got even more exposition and more development of all that stuff and really kind of seeing it, it just recontextualizes an area of Star Wars that I've never really, I've really kind of grown tired of it in a lot of ways. But if this was if we got this and it was like 10 more years of the Empire, like, hell, give it to me. That's fine. I'll do it, but I'd like to do more different stuff.
Right.
Anyways, I don't know. I don't know if any of that made sense, but that's how I feel. What about you?
No, I mean, it's hard to add too much on top of what you said. I mean, to in many ways exceed what we got with season 1 is an achievement. And I think what we had some of the absolute best television period I've seen in a long time in the series. And I won't say it's every episode, but there are some gems in this series, and there are hits all over the place. Like, this is a great season. I'm with you. I think in some regard, I think it could have been a disaster, like the jumping of a year every 3 episodes and only spending a few days and finding a key moment. I think they did a pretty good job. I mean, we could probably pick 1 or 2 that maybe were a little weaker than the others of kind of arcs, but I think overall you see why they chose those moments and why they were critical to understand. And I think I have a better appreciation of some of it because you and I get to talk it through, and I get to hear kind of your perspectives on it. And we get to talk. This has created a lot of conversation with people I know at work.
Oh, yeah,
too,
for sure. Same here.
Which has been fantastic. We've not had good conversations about Star Wars. Like,
it's been a while.
People in my circles in a while, right?
Mando season 2.
you and I have great conversations every week, but with other people outside of my normal Star Warsing circle coming up and wanting to talk about it and like tell me how much they enjoy it or how much they're slow playing it because they want to absorb it and they want to talk in detail. They're coming at me with all of this stuff. I'm not prepared for it. It's like you and me sitting down talking about it, or listeners in the chat, like, you know, putting their own theories out there. It's incredible. It's amazing. It's awesome. And it's a testament to what they've poured into the series. And you gave credit where it was due. We put a lot of that on Tony Gilroy and maybe on Genevieve O'Reilly and Diego Luna and company, but they have put together a team that has, and they kept that team together for season 2, that has absolutely just blown it out of the water of like what they were able to accomplish, both visually, storytelling, and just all of everything that goes into, you know, the cinematic feat. Not many flaws, you know, in it whatsoever. And again, I mean, there's just so many great things to talk about with this series, and a lot more to chew into later on, you know, as we want to get to it. And as people want to, if you want to have suggestions, let us know in the comments, of course. But, you know, it's just so much more to kind of bite into and really, you know, lay into it and see what else we have. And again, could have been really bad, like with the way that with them jumping around. And you're right, there's a lot more they could have done, you know, and we had some people in the chat saying the same thing. Like, it would have been great. We knew it was going to be 5 seasons. It would be great if we had more, maybe just one extra season. Yeah. And I think we could probably bargain ourselves to death about and find examples of why that would make sense. But I think at the end of the day, we got what we got, and some of the best television we've seen in a long time. And I think without question, the most cohesive, impactful, emotional storytelling we've had in Star Wars, perhaps ever, all the way back to the beginning. And at the very least in a very long time. And you can see the love and the appreciation and the respect they have for the franchise going into this series. And we got that in spades coming out of it with really, I don't anybody that's complaining about this series, you know, probably has just a chip on their shoulder and just looking for something to complain about.
Do you think the series will get the acknowledgement from like Emmys and awards? I mean, traditionally, Star Wars gets, you know, snuffed at that. They never get anything. They get all the technical stuff. Yeah, and even in years past, they haven't gotten. VFX or music or stuff like that, right? Or costuming, maybe. I said this last week. I think episode 8 in particular, I think there are 1 or 2 episodes in here that I really do feel are award worthy of being at least nominated. And I think in a number of categories, costuming, I think, comes to mind right away. For sure.
I'm with you. The musical journey, go watch Declassified for those that haven't watched it, because they talk about the music and the evolution of the music from less of the orchestral stuff and moving towards more orchestral later on. And when you kind of think about it and rewatch some of that, you sense more of it. But I think when to use music and when not, the cinematography, the directing, I think, like you've mentioned so many times throughout our coverage of this, the director lens and how they've positioned the camera, the angles that we get are unique, and they tell a story in and of themselves as we do it. Like Kleya in the restaurant, when she's focusing on the people and it fades in and out and, you know, changes your perspective of what she's looking at. Subtle things like that matter. And I think the writing and the story, I really think that we have 2 or 3 episodes in here that could get award nominations at the very least. And I think Star Wars should be considered, because it's not hyperbole. I think this has been some of the best television we've seen in a while. And it's right up there with some of the ones that are getting those award nominations. So we should be in the conversation from a franchise perspective, I think, at the very least.
Yeah, we definitely need to be in the conversation with this. I mean, if we don't get it from this series, I don't know that we ever get it, quite honestly, because
there's just nowhere else that it would come from. I mean, no disrespect to anybody else that's writing material, but this is just on a totally different level.
Yeah. Hey, I know you're going to get into some thank yous as we wrap up here, but I did want to kind of highlight just 2 things that happened on our show tonight. Zorallen's gifted 5 Cantina Cast memberships, so thank you for doing that. That's very sweet of you. You're such an angel. Thank you so much for giving people the special swag they get as a member of the member of the Cantina Cast. And then Katya is a new member, so she came in tonight and pledged, I think it was $1 or something. It's all you need, $1 to get that.
Jorge as well, yeah.
And Jorge as well. Oh, sorry, I didn't see him on there. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate you guys doing that. It's very sweet. Feel very humbled and honored for you to do that. And we'll leave it there. You want to say thank you to the 8 billion people that joined us tonight. Go ahead.
We had a great crowd and a fantastic conversation. Thank you all for joining us in the live stream. CantinaCast.com/YouTube. If you're listening to this, you can join these amazing people. Zorallen's, Matthew, Sky, One Up versus CPU, My Star Wars Guys, Boring Dad Sleep Stories. I said it right. Hello Internets, Stephanie, Music Train, Gary Smith, Alex, Katya, Jorge, Polish Kid 88, Wyatt, Skywalker's Academy, Danny K, Hard Countered, Aggressively Relaxing, Trent. If I missed anybody, my sincerest apologies. We certainly appreciate it. We see all you folks in the background. We appreciate you coming out. Thanks for joining us for a couple of hours plus on your Thursday night. And we hope you'll join us on other content as well as we get into Tales of the Underworld and continue our coverage. And if you're interested in Patreon, cantinacast.com/Patreon. I'm dead serious. And I think Albert is probably on board with me here. We need to do some character spotlights and dissections on some of these amazing characters in this series. So if you're interested in that type of thing, join us over on Patreon. We'll work on some of that stuff throughout the summer and get you guys some more content there and really explore these characters in detail. cantinacast.com/Patreon. There's a tier for everyone. We appreciate you just being a part of our community. Yeah, we really appreciate all that. So thank y'all so much.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a lot of conversations yet to come on Andor. And just to kind of tease up, we don't have a date exactly landed just yet, but we've mentioned this. We do have our fact poi. So we call that the from a certain point of view. We'll bring on some Patreon members and do a Patreon exclusive show. We're going to do our top 10 moments. Oh, no, just kidding. Top 3 moments.
Usually do top 3 and top 500.
500 honorable mentions. We'll do a roundtable discussion with Patreon members, live, record it for Patreon, and talk about our top 3 moments of season 2 of Andor. And holy bananas, like just trying to wrap my head around, like, what are the 3 moments? My goodness, I don't know if we can do that. We may have to do a top 25 or something. I don't know. We'll talk about that later. So, wow. Anything else before we get out of here?
I think so. The folks in the chat are saying it all too well. May the force be with us all.
Yeah. Thanks, guys, so much for joining us, and we will see you guys here on the next episode.
You're still listening? Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.